Hey, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are, of course. Welcome back to another stream, another Saturday. We made it through another week. How are you guys? How are you guys? We're gonna do the same thing as we have done in a couple different streams, right? We're gonna talk a little bit about the markets last week, what happened. I'm gonna drink some coffee. And then we're just going to look into some mining stocks. And we are going to see what the industry has done this week. So yeah, we're just going to give people a little bit of time to get to the stream, to pop in. But yeah, hope you guys have had a good week. Let me just set everything up correctly so that there are no interruptions. Ah, yeah, this seems nice. Definitely a very interesting week it has been. Hey Marco, good to see you again. It's the afternoon for me, but it's probably the morning for a lot of you guys in Canada or in America. Another week has gone by, you know, very historic week in the markets. We've created the first trillionaire on Earth. Huh? Isn't that crazy? Elon Musk has become the first trillionaire. You know, as of yesterday, I believe, right? Elon Musk has launched the SpaceX IPO. The one we talked about last week, right? Where he's going to pump everything into people's retirement accounts. That has made him the first trillionaire on Earth. And that is a 1 with 12 zeros. Isn't that crazy? Congrats, everybody. Congrats. Oh, if you guys see there's a little fly in my room, I hope it's not annoying. I hope you guys don't hear it. But, you know, couldn't get him out before the stream started. So he's going to enjoy this stream with me. Pretty crazy. Historic week. The first trillionaire, huh? Who knew? Who knew? Who knew? But you know, pretty soon we're all gonna be trillionaires, and then everybody's gonna have $1 trillion, and then buying a single loaf of bread is gonna cost you a couple billion. So, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really mean anything, but damn. I haven't seen the ticker yet for SpaceX, so I can't... I can't look it up yet, but, you know, it's already a $2 trillion company at the moment, which is crazy, which makes it definitely one of the most valuable stocks in the world right now. I believe it's number 5 at the moment, but I am unsure about that. So yeah, here you see it, you know, the SpaceX IPO. This is what made the guy a trillionaire. The ticker is SPCX. Let me just see it, SPCX. Oh yeah, it's right here. All right. Let me just look at what happened. Let me just look at what happened on the day. So you can see there was definitely a very big pop, right, for SpaceX. Marco watched the IPO trading like a show. We'll never buy it at this price. Yeah, what's it worth right now? You know, $2 trillion for a money losing company is not a good deal. in whatever way you want to spin it. There's a reason why this IPO happened. Elon Musk became a trillionaire off of this. The money has already been made for the people who are going to make money on this. The money is not going to be made in buying this stock, of course, but that is not something everybody agrees with. But yeah, as of right now, they are losing money. Their earnings are, their profits are negative. People are paying $2 trillion for it. And it actually rose on the day for about 17%. All right. Making Musk the first trillionaire. Hey, welcome everybody. See a bunch more people joined. We are just hanging out for a moment, letting people join a little bit. And then afterwards, we are going to look at the markets. And then we are going to dive into some stocks. Gonna do some live due diligence. So let me know what stocks you guys want to look at. I got time to do about 2, 3, maybe 4 of them today, depending on how interesting they are. Last week, we found a very interesting stock. That was this one. I put it on my watch list. Let me see. Where is it? I got a big watch list at the moment. It was this one, Borealis Mining. We looked into that. Really liked the company. And, been doing some more research on it. Still looks pretty good. Marco, the VC that invested in SpaceX over 6 years ago got their 10x yesterday. Yeah. And that's where the money is made, right? With this kind of stock. The money is made before the IPO. If you're going to IPO something for $2 trillion, you want to be in it a couple of years earlier, and then you want to dump it on retail investors. And the sad thing about that is that usually, right, in the past, people had to make the active decision to go ahead and buy the stock, right? But now, because they changed the rules, the NASDAQ changed their rules. The NASDAQ changed the rules for fast adaptation, right? So SpaceX is allowed to enter the NASDAQ after just 15 trading days. So that means that the VCs that made their money are going to start dumping on the retirement accounts of a lot of people in just 15 trading days, right? So there is actually going to be a lot of stuff that is going to happen. What is it? 15 days from now is 1, 2, 3, somewhere around the end of this month is going to be very interesting, because that's when it gets adopted into the ETFs, and a lot of people's retirement accounts hold a lot of these ETFs, and that's when it gets dumped on the regular person, right? That's when these VCs are going to exit their position, probably, turning that illiquid trillion that Elon Musk has into some more stone cold cash. And unfortunately, the normal person, the retail investor, and the people who work for their money and have a retirement account are going to be the ones handing over their money. But yeah, first trillionaire, pretty huge. Congratulations to that guy, It's a pretty big achievement at the end of the day. But yeah, what do you guys want to look at today? Any stocks that came by that you guys want to look at, want to take a deeper dive into? I got some stocks on my watch list that we could always just go over. Some stocks that I used to own, some stocks that I know are pretty well talked about. But I really want to use this time I was muted there for a second. I'm very sorry. But definitely, we're going to take a look at Nikola Mining in a second. But I want to look at the charts for a little bit as well, because if you were invested in this market over the past week, just like me, if you have a portfolio that looks anything like me, which is primarily developers, junior exploration companies, maybe a couple mid-tier miners, you have had a horrible week last week. Unfortunately, those things happen. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't disqualify the thesis that we have. We just made a horrible week. I think I've lost about 15% last week, something like that. But it's just paper losses. It's not realized losses. The only thing that is realized is when you sell, of course. And it's not a loss until you actually realize it. Up until that point, it's just paper losses. But definitely a lot of paper losses last week. We saw that gold dropped on the week. If we look at this price range, it didn't even drop a lot, right? But the volatility was horrible. Gold dropped about 2.6%. Silver dropped about from Monday. Silver is flat on the week, actually. I did not expect that at all, especially given the fact that, these mining stocks, right, went down, about like 5 to like 7 to like 10%. But during the week, they went down. Let me just see. They went down about 15%. So yeah, that's where my 15% loss in my portfolio came from. My portfolio tracks this pretty well. But yeah, I've been thinking about why that happened, and I do think that the most obvious thing is the SpaceX IPO. Right, a lot of people who are invested in the gold and silver mining space are people who have risk capital, are people who are willing to take a chance, and are people who are willing to take risks. Right? Those are the same kinds of investors who buy IPOs. Unfortunately, it's just the case. It's just retail investors trying to chase hypes. That is, unfortunately, a lot of people in this industry as well. I don't like that. That's why, I'm doing these kind of live streams to get people a little bit more calm about everything that's happening. But I do feel like a lot of people sold their gold, their silver, their Bitcoin over the past couple weeks, and as a result, their mining stocks as well, to participate in this SpaceX IPO. Because this $2 trillion company that just went public, right, it has to suck in capital from other parts of the market. And I do believe that this drawdown is part of that, sucking capital that's moving from one market to another. But, we'll see. A lot of it has already been has already came back. The 15% loss in my portfolios is probably going to be repaired pretty soon. All of these stocks are still cheap, and that is really the main thing, right, that I want to emphasize with this due diligence that I do, with looking at these charts every single week, going over these companies. So that if the story in your mind is correct, and if you know why you hold a stock, right, then a 15% weekly volatility, it doesn't hurt you at all, right? It just makes for a better buying opportunity at some point. And I know that that's easy to say, right? It's a lot tougher to do because that requires a lot of patience. And patience is something extremely difficult, as all of us probably know. But yeah. Hey, Costi. Good morning, man, from Canada. If you have time, can we get a deep dive into Ericsson Mining and Q Gold? All right, let me just write those down before I forget them. Ericsson Mining and Q Gold. Q Gold, quality gold. Q Gold. resources, I believe, then. All right. First, want to talk a little bit about the markets, about what happened. And afterwards, we're going to look at a couple mining stocks, we're going to look at a couple companies, and then we're going to get into it. But I was watching the Hedgeless Horseman. I really like his videos. I really like his stoic view on this market. And I watch all the videos that he posts with his copium and with his explanation about his view on the market. And he made a really good point. He says that we've had this massive run up, right, in the price of gold. Everybody knows that we went from 1800 to about 5,000, and now we have a pretty sizable correction, actually, that has been going on for a couple months now, right? Let me see. The correction has been going on from January until where we are now. That is about 130 days. What's that? About 4 months, something like that. It's a 4-month long correction, and the correction is right now about 25%. So that's a pretty sizable correction, right? That's actually, and this is something that he has shown me, and I'm really appreciative of that. But this is the biggest correction, this 25% down move, right? Is the biggest correction since this bull market started all the way. Let me get rid of all of these arrows. Since the bull market started in 2015, right? So this correction that we are experiencing right now is the biggest correction that we are experiencing since the bull market started in 2015. And that really says a lot about the size of this correction, right? And about the state that we are in right now and what we can expect in the future as well. Because from this point on, right, how much more correction is there possibly going to come? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves, because, let me take a sip. Because if there is a huge correction coming from this point, right, then we need to calculate that in our expectations. Lee, I totally embarked on a super commodity train, but I diversified on the whole complex precious metals and mining stocks 40%, energy stocks 30%, and then industrial metals about 15%. I like doing that. It is just that at some point in my investment thesis as well, I wanted to diversify into the oil and gas industry, because I know that, if you believe in the theory that the super cycle is real and that all commodities are going to go up, then you want to participate and you want to diversify. I understand the idea behind diversification, but I don't really agree with it. And I know a lot of people say that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, but I never really agreed with that. And I'm going to explain why. And afterwards, we're going to go back to this gold chart and we are going to look at a correction that is potentially going to come. But the thing with diversification that always really never really sat well with me is running an investment portfolio is like having a business. But it's not like having one business, it's like having 15 different businesses. My portfolio consists of about 15 to 16 different companies at any given time. I don't like to have more than that in my portfolio because I only have this much attention and I only have this much time. And if I have more companies than that, I feel like I'm missing crucial pieces of information that I need to follow up on when I have these businesses. So if you see your investment portfolio as a business that you're running, right, I think it will be very difficult for me personally to know a lot about all of the different industries that all of these companies are in. I only focus on gold and silver investing and gold and silver mining because I understand something about gold and silver mining. I'm not an expert at it by any chance, but over the past years, I've understood what kind of information comes out, what information is good, what information is bad, how to look for crucial pieces in mind building that are actually relevant, when you want to make an investment. And if you want to diversify into a lot of different commodities, you are going to have to follow a lot of different kinds of information. And you have to follow, if you want to get into grains, right? I had a conversation with somebody on the phone the other day. He was a very big grain trader. But if you want to get into the grain business and you want to have an edge there, then that means that you got to follow all the information that's out there about grains. You got to have an opinion about that. You got to find companies that have been in the grain industry for a long time, and you got to find the best companies there. I think in such a case, if you want to diversify into 20 different commodities, then you're going to have an opinion about every single one of those commodities. And I believe that just requires so much effort and so much knowledge that I simply don't possess. So I always like to focus on the things that I do, right? I like gold. I like silver. I understand the story behind it. And I understand kinda-ish what to look for with these mining companies. So I want to focus on that, and I want to become better at that, and I want to be able to identify opportunities in this market, right? And the way that I always think about it, if you think about running your portfolio like a business, how weird is it that somebody comes up to you and tells you, no, you shouldn't be running one business at a time. That's too risky. You should be running 20 different businesses simultaneously and not focus on any single one of them. I always think focus is a lot more important than diversification. But, I could be wrong, because if the gold thesis is wrong and if the silver thesis is wrong, then I'm going to lose all my money. That is, and you diversify because you want to spread your risk, of course. But, I'm young and I'm willing to take risks. So for me, diversification doesn't add anything, right? It only dilutes my potential profits, right? I would much rather have one single company that I know everything about, that I'm 100% behind, and bet everything I have on that and have it fail, than that I would have 20 different companies that I hope are going to do well at some point that I don't really understand anything about, right? I think, focus is a lot better than diversification. Until a certain point, of course, if your portfolio is big enough, right, you can diversify. And if you just want to maintain your wealth, then diversification is probably a good way to do that. But I'm trying to grow my wealth. I'm young. I want to do something with my life. I got plans. I got future things planned. So, yeah. Marco, this is your full-time job. Yeah, this is my full-time job too. Don't tell my boss that, because he's going to get very mad at me. But this is my full-time job. Yeah, for sure. Good day from Singapore. Hell yeah, man. Singapore, great country. Great place to be, I believe. It's is Singapore, give me a little insight on Singapore right now, because I always hear from people that it's really becoming a financial hub in Asia. I really would like to visit at some point. I heard a lot of good things about Singapore. Hey, can you help share your recent analysis about Free Gold Ventures? Yeah, I own Free Gold Ventures. It's in my portfolio. Love the stock. A lot of ounces. Keeps coming up with more ounces. Super cheap. I really like it. That's the two sentence. We can get into it in a little bit. I made a video about it as well, I believe, a while back on my channel. You can check it out. But I do like the stock. Yeah. Anyway, diversification and specialization left out. Let's look at this correction that we're in, right? To recap, we've been in a correction in gold, and this correction that we are experiencing right now is the biggest correction that we've experienced since the bull market started in 2015. Now, the question then is, we just had this correction. what potentially could be following. Now, if we go back to the last time we had a huge correction, right? If we go back to the correction in 2008, and I want to go back to 2008 because that's kind of where we are in the market right now. We got a massive speculative bubble. People are going wild with their money. And we just had the first $2 trillion IPO. And we just minted the first trillionaire on Earth. So I think that the market is very frothy right now. We are in a bubble and it's going to burst at some point. Well, what happened the last time a bubble bursts? We got a correction in gold that from peak to bottom was 33.8%, right? And that was from 2008 until 2008. It didn't last a year, but that correction lasted until the bottom, about 217 days. And 2008, I was still in school at that time. I bet a lot of people were actually invested. That are watching right now, was a pretty bad time. A lot of shit got stirred up. But during that time, gold dropped 33.8%. Well, if we go back to what we just experienced in gold, we can see that gold has dropped right now from peak to bottom about 27.9%. So that means that if we are going to have a full-blown financial crisis meltdown in the price of gold, right? And we are going to look from peak to bottom, we are going to go down 33%. That would mean that we are going to go down to $3,000 and $3,500 gold. That is a further decline from here of about 16%. Well, that doesn't seem that bad to me, at least. And this is the worst financial crisis that we've seen since God knows when. 2008 was really horrible. Gold fell 33%. A lot of things got blown up in that recession, in that financial crisis. And to get to the same magnitude of correction, we only need to drop 16 more percent. So, I don't think that is that bad. We can definitely go down another 16%. Mind you, I don't want to have too much money in a single stock because you can lose everything if the mining company goes bankrupt. That's why I have 57 different gold and silver stocks. Yeah. Well, let me just be clear. I don't advocate on owning one singular stock. If you run the company, you should only own that stock because that just makes sense, right? Because then you're actually involved and invested. But what I meant with the diversification is that I don't want to own a lot of stocks in different industries because then I have to have so many opinions about different industries, right? I own about 15 gold and silver mining companies. I own 15 to 16 of them because, I want to read all the information that comes out. I want to read all the news releases. I want to read all the financial statements, the management discussions, the 43 101s. That just requires a lot of time. And time is, not something that I have an unlimited amount of. So I'm capped on the amount of companies that I'm willing to invest in. And over the years, I have noticed that if I cap myself on a certain amount of positions in my portfolio, I actually trade quality. I actually trade up in quality. So sometimes you see something that is so good, then you go over your entire portfolio again, and you find the bad spots in your portfolio. You can throw them out, and you can put something else in. That is, it helped me, but this is the way that I do it, of course. But you see, if I personally would own 60 different companies, then I know that I would get blindsided by news, right? Things that I could have seen coming, but just couldn't pay attention to. So I don't have that many stocks. Marco, I own small positions in free gold since last year. It hasn't done too much. But we have to be paid. Yeah, free gold hasn't done anything at all, honestly, since I owned it as well. I think I'm flat or slightly up, but I've owned it for a long time, for a couple of years. but it hasn't done anything. No, that's my only. That's the only thing that I don't understand because it's super cheap. But anyway, back to this possible correction, right? If we go back to 2008 and we have another financial meltdown, it would mean that gold drops another 16 to 17%. Well, I know that all of the stocks that I own are cheap right now, right? They're extremely cheap. They're bargains right now. They're so cheap. They're giving them away, essentially. But I know that if gold drops another 16 or 17%, the stocks that I own, they're still cheap. You know, they're still cheap, even if gold drops another 17%. So I can have this entire correction. I can eat this entire correction and not sell anything and not have fundamental losses in my portfolio. And, you know, I really like that. I like that idea. I like the idea that, let me just lower this a little bit. I like the idea that I can have a full-blown 2008 level financial crisis and the stocks that I own are still cheap. That's a good spot to be in. That makes me sleep very well at night. Because the world can go to shit tomorrow and I still wouldn't be underwater. And that is a very good place to be, you know? And then on top of that, you know, you can try and find out what stock is the best to invest in. Well, you'll never know, but yeah, I thought that that was a really good observation from the Hedgeless Horseman. But yeah, I got this spreadsheet that I made a couple months ago. We won't go into it now, but you can add some numbers in there, and then you can see why I think all of these stocks are still cheap at that gold price. For silver, it's the same. Silver is a little bit of a different beast, you know. But yeah, the charts look horrible. Not gonna lie, the charts look horrible. If we just look at this, right? Gold has already gone down. You know, 25% if we go to the worst financial crisis in history, or well, in recent history. Gold could drop 33%. That would mean that it goes down around here. That, you know, the charts look horrible. It just looks like it wants to go down forever. But yeah, that's the time when you should buy, right? Gold is fundamentally cheap. It has gone down in price by about 25% already, and now the chart looks horrible. And now the chart is signaling I want to go down further. I want to go down all the way for another, what is it, until the next support, about 20%, right? This is the moment where you could be a contrarian, right? This is the moment where you could think, well, gold looks like it wants to go down, but I think it's pretty cheap. Well, I do believe that moments like this could be a nice buying opportunity. Okay, no silver, I have 54 junior mining gold and silver companies, including a small position in Vizsla and 2 majors. Intend to buy 2 more and add to at least 6 of my current positions at dip times. Adding to positions, definitely a very good idea. But how do you guys keep track of so many companies? You know, do you guys follow the news in all of these companies? Do you guys read the press releases, the financial statements, those kind of things? Like, I'm actually wondering, because I feel like, you know, I simply don't have the bandwidth to do that. But maybe I'm just missing like some, you know, some really easy ways to get all of this information. But yeah, what do you think about Vizsla Silver right now? I think the project is going to get built regardless of the cartel issues. But that seems to be resolved. Good question. I haven't looked at Vizsla Silver in a while. The cartel killed a couple of their people, which is horrible. Rest in peace to them and condolences to their families. But the cartel might want a piece of that. You know, in general, I believe that there are a lot of companies out there. There are a lot of good projects. There are projects that you can invest in where you don't have an underlying cartel risk that you have to take into account, right? So, I don't own it. The cartel is one reason of it. I believe it was pretty expensive too, or well, not expensive, like well priced. I don't know how you say that, but it has come down 50%. Wait a minute. See, this is the nice thing about corrections, right? Because last time I looked at Vista Silver, let me just see when I made a video about Vista Silver. Just give me one moment. Because in November 2025, I made a video about Vista Silver. And at that point, Vista Silver was about $7. So since the last time I looked at it, it's down about 30%, right? And that changes a story completely, of course. Because something that is expensive could become cheap, and then the story changes, right? That doesn't take away the fact that the cartel is still involved and that they've killed a bunch of people there, which is a horrible, tremendous risk that you have to take into account, because if you get squeezed for money once, you will get squeezed for money again. So who knows what's going to happen. But I haven't looked at it in a while. They might be able to build the project, but the cartel risk is definitely still going to be there. And you also have to take into account the fact that big money is going to be pretty nervous when the cartels do shit like this, around your property. But yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while. And this correction definitely looks pretty interesting, right? Minus 50%. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I know that a lot of these charts, right? And this is a point that I want to make as well. A lot of these charts look horrible. And I kind of like that, right? A lot of these charts, this is Goliath Resources, right? All of these charts, they went down 50 to 60%, right? And right now, gold looks and is signaling that it wants to go lower even. So, the charts look like they want to drop another 50% from here, right? To go back to like this support zone right here. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that great? Isn't that the moment where you should be thinking, oh wait, maybe this might be a moment where I could be buying some cheap stocks, right? I think it could be. A lot of projects are really attractive right now. I own a lot of Abra Silver. I love this story. I've been in it for a long time. I own some Discovery Silver as well. Let's look at Discovery for a moment, right? It ran up a whole bunch. It corrected about 36% from the top, right? Is this a good moment to get in? I don't know. I bought it somewhere around here, so I'm kind of tainted in my view there. But yeah, Abra Silver as well, right? I really like this company. I done a lot of research. Looks really good. Own a pretty big position in it, but it's down 25% from the top. That's a good opportunity, right? That's a better buy than it was a couple weeks ago. But, at these points, right, when these charts look horrible and when gold is signaling that it's going to go down further, right? At this point, when gold is saying I'm going to go down another 20% to get to this zone right here, to this support zone, all of that is getting calculated into these gold prices, into these stock prices. And so even though these stocks are already cheap, they are getting sold tremendously hard because gold is down 30%. A lot of these gold mines are down 50, 60%. Well, that is an asymmetry that you can take advantage of as just a regular investor. If you have the patience, of course, if you have the patience. Should be the next silver stock to make a big move. Yeah, Abra is nice. I like Abra. I like the management team. I really like what they've done to the property over the time that I owned it, because they started with a pretty small pit and now they've made it into a really big discovery. And they are moving into the, the permitting decisions and all kinds of other stuff, Kino, I'm staying away from GR Silver as it shares a property boundary with Visla Mines. Yeah, might be a potential takeover target if Visla is going to build their mine, and if they have tremendous cash flow, then who knows? They might be buying the neighbor. That's a strategy you can employ in your portfolio. Pretty risky, if you're betting on one outcome, but it is something that you can definitely look at. I believe. Mind you, I believe Visla has made payments to the cartel, but they cannot state that they have committed a crime. Yeah. Well, who knows if they've paid a payment to them, because they did murder these people. So if you're paid as a cartel, there is less motivation, right, to commit actual murder at that point. But I don't know. I don't know if they did or they didn't, but I know that if you're in the crosshairs, if they look at you and they see weakness, they're just going to take advantage of that. And it is unfortunate that a company like Visla is pumping out press releases that say that they've received 300 million bucks in their bank account. The cartel is just going to look at that and they feel entitled to a piece of that money. And that is very unfortunate. And so if you are a big investor, right, if you want to fund 100 million bucks worth of Visla Silver, you're going to have to take into account that 20% of that might just go straight to the cartel. Well, you have to deal with that. Marco, this year I'm willing to bet on Abra and Seabridge. Yeah, Seabridge is very cheap, but they do have some serious problems. I think I looked at that in a couple live streams ago. They do have some serious problems that they need to be looking at. But if they can figure it out, then it's probably going to be a lot of profits, because it's an extremely cheap company at the moment. Let's just look at the indices, what they've done, right? Because we just looked at gold. Let's look at the gold and silver ratio. We've been looking at this week on week, and this triangle has still been building out. You can see that we broke out to the upside, or well, we broke out to the downside, then we went back in. Now we broke out to the upside and we're retesting it. Pretty pivotal moment right here. Pretty pivotal moment right here. Then I'm still a little bit sick. I don't know how this has lingered on for 2 weeks, but this is definitely a very pivotal moment, because I'm gonna say an extremely big analysis piece right now. This can either go up or it can go down. I know. These are the kind of insights that you only get at SilverLiningAnalysis. It can go up or it can go down. But all jokes aside, this is a pretty key moment, because if this breaks down and from this point we go lower, then it is a pretty solid indicator that we are actually going to resume this bull market in silver, which means that a lot of speculation is going to come back in the market, which means we are potentially at the end of this correction. But if this goes up, we can potentially see another lag in this correction, which means that we might get to the 2008 numbers, which means that gold can drop another 16% from here, which means that you are mentally going to have to prepare for a portfolio that is going to go down 40% from this point on. But that kind of depends on this chart. So, this is going to be very important next couple weeks to take into consideration. But, if this backtest is completed and it goes up, we'll prepare to hold a lot of paper losses for the next couple months. That doesn't mean anything, because if you've done your research well and you've bought cheap companies, then you know that the companies that you own are cheap. And a cheap company, if it goes down in price, you just make more money when it goes up and you buy more. And this is what I meant with all of these charts looking ugly, right? If we look at the GDX, we can see that it had a uptrend here, right? GDX, for the people who don't know, index for big gold mining companies. It has dropped about 30% from the top, so it had a pretty decent correction, about in line with the correction in the gold price. But from here, it is actually signaling, right? It is actually signaling that it wants to go down to another support zone, which is about here, right? Somewhere about this zone, which is another 30% drawdown. That's what it's signaling right now. That all depends on what gold does, and that all depends on what the gold and silver ratio does, and that probably all depends on what the stock market does. If we see the stock market dip from here, we might see the 2008 scenario play out, which means that gold can drop another 18 to 20%, which means that the GDX can drop another 30. So, you know, the next couple months, I don't know. I don't want to say that it's something that we should really care about, because at the end of the day, I don't want to look at these prices all that much. You know, I look at my portfolio, the actual value of it, maybe once a month or something like that. You know, so it doesn't really affect me personally. But, you know, you should definitely be mentally prepared to wait for a longer time. And the same is probably true with the GDXJ, the SIL, and the SILJ. You know, all of them having big corrections. All right, you have this, you know, I'm not really a chartist, but I try sometimes. But, you know, something like this. There was an uptrend, it broke the uptrend, now we're down, right? About the same amount, 35%, and it's signaling that it wants to go lower. I'm personally, right, and this is going to don't do this, right? This is not financial advice. Don't take my opinions into account. I'm an idiot. You know, all the disclaimers aside, I'm actually thinking of maybe getting very long with some options on the GDXJ or the SILJ. I have to see how I will do that exactly, but the fact that everything is pointing towards another down leg kind of tells me that this might be the bottom. Because I don't see a very clear reason why gold would drop another 20% from here. Right? The first correction, this correction, let me go back to the gold price. This correction, I fully understand. We went up $2,500, 100% in the price of gold. I fully understand why we needed a 30% correction. I get that, right? But assuming that the world isn't going to end tomorrow, and assuming that the financial markets are not going to melt down in the next couple months, I don't see why gold would have another big correction from this point. That, with the fact that all of these charts just look ugly and are pointing lower, you know, there's not a lot of speculation in this market right now. I don't see a lot of chatter on Twitter about people saying that gold is going to go to $9,000 at the end of the year. So a lot of this speculation has gone. And I like that. And that's a point where I would consider taking on some more leverage, you know, but of course that's extremely risky. Don't do that. Don't listen to me, you know, don't take my advice. This is not advice, by the way. Have to save your own ass in these kind of markets, you know. Kino, Sun Silver, Australian company with Nevada property, with claims that makes this the largest untapped silver resource in the USA. Very long-term and risky. Sun Silver. That is a pretty big claim. You know, generally speaking, if you look up the name of a company, it should come up first in your Google results. If it doesn't, you need to work on your CEO. That is not a chief financial officer. That is a search engine optimization. This is a very important thing for companies, right? I just want to go on this rant for a little bit because it's my YouTube channel. I can do what I want. But in general, I feel like we as a mining industry and people who are invested in mining stocks, we should be taking these companies to the next level. We should be taking them to the digital age because a lot of these companies are kind of stuck in the past. And, you know, they have moved with the times, but not enough at all. What I mean with that is that a lot of these mining companies, they still work with like WordPress websites from 2015, right? They still have visuals that were made by an intern like 5 years ago. There isn't a good search engine optimization in a lot of these websites. They're still doing mailing lists. They're still doing chat bots on their website. All of that stuff is old. Nobody wants to see that. None of us, right? And with me, I talk about people around 30, right? Aging myself right now, but I don't really mind. We don't want to see that. We don't care. Nobody cares about that. We want to have a slick website. We want to have a one-pager. We want to have a good Twitter account. We want to have visuals, videos, TikToks, shorts, stuff like that. We don't want to have boring-ass websites anymore. And I feel like there's a couple companies who do that really well. But I see just a lot of companies in here that are just missing the ball completely on the digital marketing aspect. Especially, right, this stuff, right? I search for Sun Silver. It's an Australian mining company. This should just come up first when you look. If it doesn't, you have work to do because, you know, your business is selling stock online. You should be taking that serious, right? And especially in a market that is completely driven on retail investments. I know that a lot of people in this industry, I know that a lot of young people in this industry are still in crypto and they're still in tech stocks, but eventually they are going to move towards, the mining space because gold and silver are the future, simply speaking. And we need to find companies that are going with the time. I think that's a tremendous benefit for a company to have at this point. If you are very digitally prepared for the next move of retail investors migrating from crypto to the mining space, you have a tremendous edge. And I always come back to Palistates as an example of this, because this is actually a company who really understands the retail investor in the year 2026. This is a company that has this YouTube channel. Oh, I'm not going to put their YouTube channel in here. You know, you probably, Palistates Gold Radio, you probably know about it if you're in the gold space. But they have this huge resource in their YouTube channel. They provide excellent content. And based on top of that, it's very unfortunate, by the way, that Tom guy, that bold guy, is no longer the host, because new host is this Dutch dude. He has a lot less charisma than the old host. I really miss him. Tom Brajovic or something like that. Unfortunately, he is gone, you know. Rest in peace to my guy. He was a great guy to listen to, great interviewer. But he really put this name on the map. And then you go to the website, and the website is just slick. You know, they have visuals, they have on-point information. Like, this is something that my generation really looks up to. You know, this is something that my generation looks at and they're like, damn, this company is on top of the game right now. And I do see, you know, this branding in here, right? This is very important. This is actually what makes or breaks your connection to the retail investor of tomorrow. And there's just tremendous opportunity there. And there's not a lot of companies who are taking advantage of that because, you know, there's a big difference between that website and this one. You know, I don't want to bash on a website too much, but you know, there's just there's levels to this. There's levels to this digital marketing game, and unfortunately, the retail investor that is right now in the crypto market is so digitally advanced that they expect companies to move forwards, you know, at their same pace. And that means, you know, being on Twitter, being on TikTok, being on Instagram, being everywhere, doing a lot of quality interviews, doing a lot of quality work to get your branding out there. Anyway, a little bit of a rant in that aspect, but I do think it's extremely important. Yeah, that Tom guy from yeah, that's exactly right. It's called the oh, what's it called? The Solvent Man or something. It's something man. Let me actually just look it up because yeah, it's the Competent Investor podcast. Wait, let me just wait, it's this one. It's the Competent Investor. If you guys really liked his interview style, the Competent Investor podcast, you can still find him. I really like this interviewer. So unfortunate that he left, but you know, there's probably some deals behind the scenes that, you know, it's probably just about money at the end of the day, you know. Yeah, the Competent Investor podcast. Yeah, for sure. Definitely learned a lot from him as an interviewer. Super cool, super well spoken, calm guy. You know, excellent for a podcast in the gold space. Anyway, a little rant about digital marketing. Extremely important, especially in the upcoming age. You know, where everything is just going to be marketing. Anyway, let's dive into some companies, huh? Let's dive into some due diligence. Talked about the charts for a little bit, about all the boring stuff. Let's start with Sun Silver because that's the one where we are on right now. I don't know this company, but the Maverick Silver boasts a global significant inferred mineral resource of 540 million ounces of silver equivalent. AG is silver, EQ is equivalent. That means that not all the ounces in this deposit are silver, but that means that they are having an economic value that equals 539 million ounces of silver at a given silver price. All right, let's look into it. The Maverick project. You know, if I can have an opinion about this website, you know, it's just this needs to be fixed. Let's look at the dashboard as well. Like, let's look at the presentation. Let's look at the reports, and let's look at the management team. Where's the management team? All right, I guess that the management team is hiding somewhere on the website. Sure, we'll find them. But Nevada, yes, we know about Nevada. Nobody cares. Overview. A resource expansion 2012. Whoa, that's an old resource. All right. Okay. Let's see. What do we got here? What do we got? Right, so they have a resource expansion on a 2012 12 inferred mineral resource, and they have 539 million silver equivalent ounces, and that includes 347.5 million ounces of silver itself at a grade of 45.5 gram per ton. That's pretty nice. And they have 2.25 million ounces of gold at a pretty low gold grade of 0.3%. That unfortunately might be pretty difficult to start mining because that's pretty low grade gold. But we'll see. Pretty big resource in general. So that's a good start. That makes it worth it to look at further, right? Because if the resource is too small, then it might not be worth it at all. Sun Silver. Right? As we can see, just like the rest of the stocks, this stock has collapsed about 60% since the peak, right? So we're not buying it at peak valuation. We're not looking at it in the peak. We're looking at it after it went down more than 60%. That's a good time to look at a stock. But it's less than $1 right now. All right. Last presentations, I want to see their presentation. And let me just... All right. So they say they have the largest pre-production primary silver project on the Australian exchange. Primary silver is pretty good. They have a whole bunch of silver ounces. If you are a silver bull, that is very nice. The silver grade is also pretty good. But let's see if they can get it out and where the project is located. Pre-assay deliveries. All right. They have a corporate structure right here. They have 145 million shares outstanding. They sold some more shares, right? So right now they have 187 million shares outstanding. For a market cap, all right. And the board and the management owns 27.8% of that. That is pretty good to see. Means that management has skin in the game. Means that they're pretty confident in the actual position itself. It's always good to see. Looks like they're pretty close to Kenross, if we see right here. They're Bald Mountain Mine. All right. Let's see the management team. Here it is. All right. Andrew Dornan. He's the managing director. He's a senior mining executive with 20 plus years of experience. He's the co-founder of Sun Silver. All right. Previously held senior roles at Newmont, Rio Tinto. All right. And some lithium explorers. So senior roles at two very big mining companies. That's good. That means that he has some very good experience. Otherwise, you're not going to get a senior role there. So pretty good. Sean Hardcastle, a non-executive chair. He has a legal career for 20 years. All right, so he is the lawyer. Sean is currently a partner at the head of corporate for the national law firm Hamilton Locke. He is also a director of Rare X Limited and previously held roles as a non-executive director for Shingas Metal Limited. All right, Rare X Limited. All right, so what is this? Driven by the clean energy revolution. Right, so what does this company do? Seems like it might be a rare earth mineral deposit. Engineering. Exploration. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Prospects. Is a strong prospect. Rich rare earth resources. All right. So he, the non-executive chairman, is also the director of a rare earth mineral company, and he has some lawyer experience. Hopefully, he has some experience in mining as well. We'll see. Dean Ercegovic. He's also a non-executive director. So we got a whole bunch of non-executive directors in this company. So where are the executives who can make decisions in here? It seems like it's the managing director who can make some decisions, and Keith Wood. All right. So this guy, founding director and chief operating officer of Primero Group. And Primero operates in multiple regions globally and is an industrial leader in the design, construction, and operation of mineral processing facilities. That is pretty interesting. That is a very good market to be in right now. Why is that? Because the processing of mineral resources is actually extremely difficult, and there's only a couple companies that can do that. Which is not this company, I believe. No, Primero Group. That sounds really interesting. I hope that that comes online, or, well, I hope that that comes to the public markets at some time, because I would love it if Europe and America got some more mineral processing facilities, because that's kind of selling shovels in a gold rush, you know? Everybody can have mineral resources, but everybody has to send all their stuff to China to process it. And if we get more processing facilities and we need more materials, then those processing facilities will become extremely valuable, maybe even more valuable than the mines mining the material. It's a very interesting market. I would love, if you guys have some names in that market, or you guys know a little bit more about the rare earth processing facilities, right? Publicly traded companies. I would love to know some names, because then I'll get into it, because that's a market I'm really interested in. And then we have Nathan Marr. He's a qualified metallurgist who has over 20 years of experience in the mining industry. Nathan has project managed and delivered over 10 operating plants in various commodities. Sounds good. No names, no commodities given, unfortunately, so nothing here to track. And then we have Keith Wood, the exploration manager. He's a former chief exploration geologist at Barrick. That used to be Barrick Gold. That is an extremely big mining company. And Nevada Gold Mines. What is Nevada Gold Mines? Nevada Gold Mines is the single largest gold producing complex in the world. Whoa, 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 whoa. And this guy was the chief exploration geologist there. Okay, this guy is holding some weight. That's pretty good. And he brings 25 years of experience in discovery and development in Nevada. So this is what I talk about when I talk about management. He has a relevant experience. He has experience in Nevada, where he has been mining for 25 years. He has successful experience at Barrick and at, apparently, the single largest gold producing complex in the world. So this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. This is a very big, big weight. That's good to see. This guy compensates for, you know, all of these other guys, honestly. This guy, head and shoulders above the rest. Looks very good. What does a guy like that do at a company like this? You know? He led the Phoenix Mine 10 years growth strategy and major discoveries at West Conness. So the Phoenix Mine, I remember that name. Yeah, so the Phoenix mine is part of the Nevada gold mines. All right. So that's the mine that he worked on, and he had a growth strategy there. So he can grow mineral deposits and he can grow mining complexes. That's very good. That's very good. You want a guy like that in your team for sure. All right, management team. There's not a lot to say about these guys. Not a lot of information that's been given except from Keith Wood. That is a very, very big name. I like that. There are some things that I'm missing in this management team, right? I can't really tell if they've worked together in the past. I can't really tell whether they have had relevant experiences, except for Keith Wood. And I can't really tell if they've had successful experiences in the past. Success meaning operating mine or sold a mine, except again for Keith Wood. So in this management team, Keith Wood, very good addition. Very good addition. So let's look at the resource itself. Mineral resource flexibility. All right. So in a table like this, right? Usually when you are looking at a resource, you are only looking at a certain amount that's been given, right? People say we have this resource at this cutoff grade. But here they say we have some flexibility in the cutoff grade. That means that the lower the cutoff grade is, the more ounces you can mine. And you can look at this in a couple different ways, and there's a single way that I look at it. A cutoff grade is a function of money, right? Something has to be economical to be mined. That means that if silver is 25 bucks, there simply is not a lot of silver to be mined. But if silver suddenly is 75 bucks, well, then the proceeds from mining are going to be a lot more. So there is a lot more costs that you can put into the ground to get all that silver out, right? So it's worth it to keep mining for it. That means a couple things, right? That means that you can lower the cutoff grade when the silver price is higher, but that also means that your costs are probably going to go up the lower your cutoff grade is. You understand what I mean with that? So they're saying, right, if they have a cutoff grade of 30, that means 30 grams per ton. They have about 479 million ounces of silver equivalent. But if the cutoff grade gets higher, they have a lot more or a lot less ounces that they can mine. So their story is that they are going to be able to mine this at this cutoff grade, right, of 30 grams per ton. But if they can't make this for any reason, then the ounces that they can mine are cut, pretty significantly. All right. I like the fact that they have, in this deposit, I like the fact that they have a very big gold or a very big silver component and a very big gold component. Kind of reminds me of the setup that you have in Abra Silver, where you have a very big silver component and a gold component, right? Because both of these commodities are going to go up and both of these commodities are extremely valuable. So let's see what they're drilling for right here. This seems to be their property boundary. Some visuals that I like about this is that the resource that they have is in the middle of their property. That means that they can start exploring around the entire mineral resource to find new materials, right? Sometimes you see companies that have a resource that's at the edge of their map. That simply means that there's no more room for them to explore. But this one actually is in the middle. There is room for exploration. That's pretty good. And they say that it's open to all areas. That's pretty decent. That means that there's a lot of room for it to grow. And that's what you want when you buy a deposit, of course. You want to buy it cheaply, and you want to buy it before all the ounces are discovered. We can see that they actually have some pretty good drill results here, right? 100 meters of 111 gram per ton silver equivalent, 70 meters, 106 meters. You know, they have some pretty fat drill results. That's pretty good. I like that. I like that. Starting pretty deep, so it's potentially going to be an underground mine, if I can just judge that from what we're seeing here. But property looking pretty good, fat drill results, and a very experienced guy in the management team. And they say that it's the largest pre-production primary silver project. All right, sure. Antimony, I don't really put too much weight into antimony. I know that antimony was pretty hyped up a couple months or like a year or two back. And then you see that if something is hyped, all of a sudden all the companies have some antimony component in them as well. So I never really put too much weight in that. But, you know, maybe this is different and a lot of money is in this antimony, but I just stick with the gold and silver because I know that in 20 years people will still be needing to buying gold and silver. And I don't know about antimony. This doesn't really tell me anything because I don't know the project that well. But this does tell me something. So right now we live in Q2 of 2026 already. You know, it's time goes fast. And they say that they are going to start doing a scoping study and an economic assessment pretty soon, right? They are going to start doing that. So they probably don't have an economic assessment right now. That's the presentation, all right. Sure. Okay. I want to see what this deposit looks like, just visually. And I want to see what their balance sheet looks like. Let's look at the latest presentation that they have. Let me see. Right. So they are kind of flexing right here that they've made a lot of money on their stock. I don't know why they do that, but this is a very important thing to see that in the last 2 years, right, they've increased their mineral resource. So that's pretty good. They added a whole bunch of ounces. I don't really care about what the stock price has done or how rich these board members have gotten. Management and board still hold 26% of the stock. It's pretty good. That's a lot of skin in the game. Let's see if they have some more visualization of their project. It looks like since 2025, since the last presentation we looked, they have added a whole bunch of claims. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Then they have more room to explore. The resource is still in the middle of the property. I really like that. Location is everything in mining. You know, if you buy around a property or around a resource, that's very valuable. Metallurgy results. Let's see, heap leaching performance of about 78%. That's fine. Recoveries of 90%. All right, so no problems there. Let's see, new plan. What are they going to do in the future? All right. So we are living right now, Q2 2026. They are doing some resource expansion drilling. That is going to go on for another year and a half. Infill drilling as well. They are targeting a updated resource at the end of this year and at the end of 2027. All right. And they are going to start doing the PEA pretty soon. All right. They are also starting on their environmental baseline studies. All right. and they are working on their mine development permit, and they are saying that they are going to target a decision in 2028. So that's about like a year and a half from now. That would be a very fast decision if they could get that done. But you know, who knows? Maybe they will, and that will be very nice. There's not much more information given. All right, so give me this resource estimate that you guys have. Let me just see if Sadar Plus is online. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, God has blessed us today because Sadar Plus is back online. You know, it's taken 5 weeks for the Canadian government to get this website back online. But hallelujah, man. They've done it. They've done it. It's back, and we are going to use it straight away. Sun Silver. I'm going to show you guys how to look for some properties. Sun Silver is on the Australian market. So we're not going to be able to use Sadar Plus. I hyped you guys up for nothing. I'm very sorry. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to look at Sadar Plus. But we're going to look it up on some other companies. Let's see. Let me clean up my desk real quick. I want to know what this 43101, what this mineral resource estimate was like. People who are investing in the Australian markets, which I don't really own stocks on the Australian markets. Where do you look for 43101 mineral resource estimates? Is that in let me just check Sadar Plus one more time, because if it's listed on Canada, then it should be in there somewhere. Maybe like this. Is this not? Yeah, this is only listed in the Australian exchange. So we're not going to be able to find it here. And I don't seem to have a mineral resource estimate. So I don't really seem to have a report. Let me see if they have a financial statement. No, we've already looked at all of this. Sorry, I'm just skipping through this real quick because I'm trying to find their financials. Right. Quarterly cash flows, Appendix 5B. This is real time me trying to figure out where to look for information on Canadian or Australian companies, because usually I invest in companies that are listed in Canada and Canada. So this is just me trying to figure out where. But let's see, Australian dollars. How much is a Australian dollar to USD? So it's about 70 cents. All right. So here we got administration and corporate expenses of about 800K. So that's about 560,000 in administration costs. All right. In the last 3 months, that's run for the course. They spent about twice as that on exploration. That's pretty good. Let's see. What other things can we see? Cash and cash equivalents at the beginning of the period. So they are cashed up, right? They got $30 million in cash. call deposits. This can be, I'm not well versed in this type of form, but it cannot be that this is call options, right? This has to be another form of call, right? That they don't have 26 million bucks in call options, right? I don't, cash and cash equivalents. Yeah, it's probably some form of cash that this is. All right, so they are cashed up. They are spending more money on exploration than they spend on admin costs. That's pretty good. But unfortunately, they don't seem to have more information on their mineral deposit. So we kind of have to take them for their word in their presentation here. It's a pretty good presentation, right? The deposit looks very big. I just would like to see a little bit more about the deposit, right? We're missing some crucial information, like a financial statement and a 43-101 mineral resource estimate, but they are not listed in Canada. So we're not going to get that because that's a purely Canadian report. However, company looks pretty good, everything considered, right? Let me just go back to the presentation that we saw, right? Just my quick 2 cents of it. The deposit is big and at a pretty good grade to start mining this. I don't know if it's going to be an open pit or an underground mine. I don't know what the deposit looks like, and I don't know what the potential is for the deposit to grow. I don't know that because they don't have a 43-101, which is a Canadian report, and this is an Australian company. But they've grown their mineral resource estimate pretty bigly since they have been on the public markets. They have a pretty big management and advisory shareholder position of 26%. And Keith Wood is in this company, which holds a lot of weight, apparently. Property looks pretty big. Deposit is in the middle of the property, and they have some pretty fat drill results. So definitely something to keep an eye on. But because they don't have their reporting out right now that I would like to see, and because they don't have a financial statement, I cannot really know how much they are diluting their shareholders, and that's a key metric for me. Although from their cash flow statements, it seemed like they were spending more money on exploration than they were on administrative costs, and that's pretty good. So all in all, definitely looks like it's worth to investigate further on this stock if you are wanting to do that on your own, for sure. Here's the contact information of all these people. So yeah, definitely give them a call and ask them, hey, what's up with the deposit? Can you share your financial statements? And questions like that. All right. There were some other suggestions to look at as well. But that was Sun Silver. Right? So the beauty about a correction that we are in right now is that these kind of stocks, right, an exploration stock that kind of has a solid story and a good deposit with some potentially very interesting management team members, right? You know, the nice thing about a correction like this is that you can get it pretty well. Cheap is a weird word to use in a case like this, but you can get it for a 60% discount. Uh, you know, from what it was at the beginning of the year. And you could have held this stock since the inception, right? Since the IPO, and you could have been super early on this, and you would have been up 140%, or you could have waited 2 years and get a lot more de-risked and get in, right, at a way better price. if you're looking at this stock and if you like it, definitely do more research into it. I know that it's down 60% from the top, and that is a very, very good thing, because that means that you're not overpaying for it in sort of a hyped up speculative top. If we look at the valuation, right, just to round all of this out real quick, this is Australian dollar, so it's 100. It's 140, or what is it? It's 182 million Canadian dollars. That's 128 million US buckaroos. And what did they have? They had about 480 million ounces silver equivalent, right? So I'm gonna get a little spreadsheet for you guys. Now we're gonna get into it. You know, when Excel gets opened, you know, that's when things get rough. That's when people are starting to click off. That's when the real questions come, you know. So they had, how many ounces did they have? I already clicked everything away and we're still gonna go back into it. How many ounces did they have? Hey, AJ Walsh, good to see you again, man. Welcome back. Was wondering where you were, man. But you're back. It's good to see. So they had 347 million ounces of silver, right? 347 million ounces of silver. And they have 2.25 million ounces of gold. 2.25 million ounces of gold. All right. All right, let me just put this in screen for you guys. Right. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Format, cell, numbers, 1,000 separators. All right. An ounce of silver right now is worth, an ounce of silver is worth 68 bucks. 68 bucks. And an ounce of gold is worth about 4,218. 4,218, right? If we do this times this, right? It's 23.5 billion. If we do this times this, and if we then say that plus that, all right, and if we then say, I'm gonna explain to you guys what I'm doing, that times 0.15, right? So this is the value. This is the total value. And this is the potential buyout at 15%. Right. So when I value a stock, right, when I look in an exploration company, I always envision, right, or I always think about the fact that these exploration stocks could be sold eventually. And they could be sold for about 15% of their resource value. Why is that? Because if we look at the past, right, these companies, the average sale price for them is about 15% of their buyout value. And we see that 15% of their deposit is 4.9 billion bucks. This company right now, Sun Silver, is trading at 182 million Australian dollars, which is about 120 million US. So you see that there's a very big difference between the value that I think this deposit has and this company's enterprise value, right? Their market cap. So there is, in that sense, a very big gap between those two. Now, let's say silver drops to 50 bucks and gold drops eventually to 3,500, right? If you bought this company at 120 million market cap, then the company would still be extremely cheap, right? There still is a very big gap between what the deposit, what the deposit is worth, and the value of the company at the moment. AJ Welch, good morning, man. Sorry I'm late. Had to do had some weird allergic reaction. Oh damn, man. Hope you're okay. I was curious if you had checked out the following core mining: RPX Gold, Silver Store Mining, and AGX. No, I haven't checked out those yet, but we have some time, so let's see what we can get into. I got a couple ones that I'm looking at after this, but right now we're looking at Sun Silver, and so like the overarching theme here is, even if these gold and silver prices are going to fall, right? Let's say that this silver is going to fall to 25 and gold is going to fall back to 2,500, then the stock is potentially still cheap, right? So, that is something that is extremely important to understand when you're looking at this exploration market, right? These stocks are cheap if you just look at them in this valuation, right? I believe under the Sun Silver Investor section, there are 2 links to third-party 30-page analyst reports, which speaks about the history and the future of this project. All right. Well, if you like the story, right, and if you liked this company up until now, you should definitely look at those links, right, and read those analyst reports. You should definitely call up the company, ask them to explain the story to you, ask them to talk to you about it a little bit, and just get into it through that way. But yeah, that's a rough overview of Sun Silver. Gonna put this one on my watch list. I'm interested. I'm interested enough to see where this goes. As you can see, my watch list is about 80 companies long, but not all of them make it into my portfolio. So let's look at another company. Let me just get some water. Let me check some things. So yeah, for the people just tuning in, we're looking at some due diligence from mining companies, right? We looked at the beginning of this stream at the developments in the gold and silver space itself, just the movements in gold and silver. We're doing some due diligence right now, some very surface level analysis, right? Just going through the presentations, the spreadsheets, the financial statements. And we're gonna do a couple more companies, right? I haven't posted some videos on my YouTube channel last week because I couldn't get to the editing, so I'm gonna edit the videos from the last week and the videos from this week. So there's gonna be a bunch of videos back to back on the channel pretty soon. But yeah, just taking like a little 5-minute break, and then we're gonna get into another one. RPX Gold. Isn't RPX a crypto coin? RPX. Isn't RPX like a... No, maybe I'm thinking about something else, but I was thinking about something else. Nikola Mining, huh? Nikola Mining, trading on a NASDAQ. So it's a pretty big company. Nikola Mining. Had a pretty good run over the last couple of years. It's down about 15% as well, about 50% as well from the top. Company is worth about 172 million. What's that, Canadian? All right, so it's a junior exploration company. About 15% off the top. It's trading on the NASDAQ as well, which is pretty interesting for a company like this. Definitely tapping into a different form of investor. If I look at the website, pretty slick, good visuals, right? I can instantly go to the corporate presentation from here. Not really, but you know, there is a idea of a corporate presentation right there. But we are going to be looking at the company. Let's see. I want to learn more about the... Okay. Never mind, I thought they had a nice website, but I can't open things in a different browser, so it's going to be a little bit bad to show this on stream, but you know, let's look at the project, right? The Treasure Mountain Silver Project. They say that the property comprises of 31 mineral tenures, 30 claims and 1 lease, covering 2,200 hectares. And it is a polymetallic vein, including a historic Treasure Mountain silver, lead, and zinc mine. So it's a fast producing mine. So that means that it's brownfield exploration and it was a underground mine. All right. With a primary silver component with some lead and zinc byproducts. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's a lead and zinc mine with a silver byproduct, but they say that in this case it's flipped. It's located in Canada and the mine is on care and maintenance. I really like that. I really like mines that are on care and maintenance right now, because that means that if it has been taken care of properly, you can flip a switch and get back to mining. Which means in an environment like this, where the silver price is extremely high, you should be able to make money, right? You should be able to get this mine back into production. So, given the fact that, well, let me just go to it. Given the fact that silver has been pretty high for pretty long right now, right? Ever since November 2025, so that's about a year right now. Why is this mine still on care and maintenance? And why is it not producing yet? That is the first question that comes up. All right. So, location. The Treasure Mine property falls on the ownership of, located in the SilverLiningAnalysis mining division in British Columbia. All right. Hope. So it's near Hope. I actually know that place. Or well, no is a big word. No is a big word. BC Hope. But there are a lot of mining companies that are located somewhere around Hope. I see this name coming by pretty often, and they say that it's about 29 kilometers northeast. And I just clicked away Google Maps. Hold up 1 second. My camera is not working right now. I'll be right back. If anybody has some camera experience or knows how to use EOS Webcam Utility Pro, please let me know, because this thing has been glitching out every single time that I use it. And it is pretty difficult to use, I have to say. It's not a nice application to use. But, you know, I'm not like used to streaming or anything, so I don't really know what I'm doing. So if anybody has some tips or some, you know, knowledge to share on that front, please let me know. I would highly, highly appreciate it. Anyway, back to Nikola mining. They say it's near Hope. So Hope has a lot of mining companies next to it. And we see that the Treasury Mountain, I just clicked away. Hope, British Columbia, Canada. They say that the mining project is somewhere around here. Somewhere in this area. All right, so it's pretty close by civilization, I guess. There's some roads, right? But not really near a major city. Okay. It's actually a pretty nice visual, right? You can see that it's on a mountain. We're gonna look at that. And then they have a historical resource. We're going to look at that too. I don't really care what they say about it. We're going to look at that too. I'm just gonna get some images that we are going to look at. Recent exploration. Do they have something for us to see? Definitely. All right. So this is their property claim. It's pretty big, it seems like. That's pretty good, right? So the red border outlining their entire property seems to be pretty decent. This is their historic mineral resource. Why is it historic? Because it's from a report in 2009. Why is that important? That is important because in 2009, gold and silver prices were a lot lower, right? So these cutoff grades are different today than they were back then, right? But they are saying that they have very low, extremely low cutoff grades, right? 5 gram per ton silver or an ounce per ton. Oh, this is ounce per ton. Don't get tricked here. So these cutoff grades are for their indicated 5 ounce per ton silver. So that is 150 grams per ton, right? So that is a lot more reasonable for an underground mining project. And they are here in 10 ounce per ton, which is about 320 gram per ton cutoff. So that is pretty reasonable cutoff grade. So they are splitting it up in 2 different categories. So they are saying they have a resource of 18.1 ounce per ton, 18 times 31. So they have silver component of 558 gram per ton and a silver component of 24.2 times 31, 750 grams per ton. So it's a very high grade silver, a very high grade silver mine. Hey, Simba, welcome, welcome, welcome to the stream. What have you missed? A lot, man. You've missed everything, man. It's we've had a big party here. No, we looked at some silver company. We looked at the markets for a little bit. Everything will be in the videos, in the vlogs. So, you know, you haven't really missed a lot, but videos will come out next week. Everything will be in there. Don't worry about it. We're looking at Nikola Mining right now. And Nikola Mining is a mining company in Canada, which has a pretty big property right now and a very high-grade silver component in their historical resource. And they also have a pretty big zinc and lead component. PB is lead, ZN is zinc, AG is silver, but silver is definitely the main component here, which is pretty rare because usually it's the other way around, where there is a big zinc and lead component and then a smaller silver component. But they say that they have about, you know, in total, what's that, 1 million? Rough back of the napkin calculations here. How much silver do they have? 1 million plus 900,000 plus 3 90 plus. They have about 9.3 million ounces of silver. That's a very small deposit, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that is very small. Or, well, let me say it like this. It's not big enough for me to really invest in, right? Because I'm looking for big deposits. 9.3 million ounces of silver, simply not going to cut it. I'm very sorry. But, you know, they got to have found a lot of gold or a lot of silver for me to be interested at this point. But this Treasure Mountain Silver project looks to be pretty small. Let's look at their other project. AJ Wells, I used to referee videos for judo tournaments, not familiar with your system, but the most frequent issue we encountered were bad USB cables. That might actually be. I got some stuff from Temu, you know, some cables that I bought for like €1 of some Chinese site somewhere. So it might actually be the cables. That's a very nice observation. I will look into that. Thanks. But yeah, I used to do some judo when I was a kid. It was a lot of fun. Definitely. I haven't done it in ages, but I remember throwing some people, over the shoulder. That was a lot of fun. Couldn't do it anymore, I think. At some point after a certain age, if you start throwing people, you're gonna blow your back out and dislocate your knee and stuff like that. So, nah. But Nikola Mining, the last project was pretty small, 10 million ounces of silver. That's simply not worth looking at. But this one has a past producing underground open pit copper mine with ongoing exploration. So now we are going to get into some copper story here. Let's see. They got some exploration going to see less than a % copper over some meters. All right. But this is something that I do want to point out, right? This is something that I do want to point out. You often see maps like this. And with maps like this, it is pretty difficult for me to really find the benefit in this. You have a property, right? With property lines. I wish I could draw on this screen right now so that you guys could see it. But you have this property, right? Which is a pretty decent sized property potentially. But then you're missing two big chunks out of it, right? That is such a damper on the overall value of your property, because that means that you have significantly less exploration potential, right? If the deposit is right here, if you want to explore more towards the east, I had to think about that for a second, more towards the east, that would mean that you get into conflict right here with the owners of this part of the property. So you don't have freedom to explore. And I really dislike that when I see that in a property. So overall speaking, as of what I see right now, it looks like it has, right, Nikola Mining, it looks like it has a pretty high grade but pretty small silver deposit in one of their properties, and it was a copper mine in the past. But I'm not really interested in copper mining. I got some copper projects that I'm really happy about, and if it's not a world-class copper deposit, then I'm simply not interested. So unfortunately, this is where it stops for me for Nikola. The deposit just isn't big enough for me to really get into exploring it more. So let's look at another company. Let's look at something else. Let's look at Have you heard about Copper Giant? No, I haven't heard about Copper Giant. The only copper story that I really own is McEwen Mining. And I own this stock primarily because of the development of their copper project, which is called Los Azul. This is a extremely big copper deposit that I think is going to be made into a mine at some point, and that's primarily why I own this stock. This is the only copper deposit that I really own. If I go outside of gold and silver, I really want a world-class, huge copper deposit, and that's what this is. But other than that, I don't really look at copper deposits all that much. So let's see. Let's add on to the next one, huh? Shall we? Let me just get up to date on some things here. Got some emails. Let me just look at that real quick. Shouldn't be doing that while you do live streaming, you know, but we're living on the edge here. All right. All up to date. Let's look at Q Gold. That was another suggestion from you guys. Q Gold. Q Gold Resources. And then I want to get the Canadian. Q Gold Resources. $46 million market cap, extremely small company. And because the size is this small, it did not really react to the gold moves up or down, but it is down about 37% from the peak. But because it's so small, you know, it really doesn't mean anything. But they say that they are a North America's next tier 1 gold developer. That is a pretty big claim. Let's look at their presentation and see what they got. I own both McEwen Mining and Copper Giant. Yeah, McEwen Mining is pretty interesting, I have to say. They got a lot of mining complexes worldwide that they are managing. Rob McEwen is also an extremely big name in the industry. And I like his attitude towards mining. But looking into Q Gold right now. Q Gold, let's see. So they start off with their share structure. They got 164.5 million common shares outstanding. They got some options. They got some warrants for a fully diluted share count of 220 million shares. So they got a bunch of options and warrants that are right now in the money at 24-cent market cap, which means that there might be potential downside pressure on this stock, which might explain why the stock has shot up and subsequently gone down afterwards. But they got a diluted stock count of almost 220 million at a market cap of 46 million. So their share count is pretty blown up, unfortunately. That some people think that's a very bad thing to see. But they got some institutional shareholders: Libra Investment, Franklin Gold Fund, ASA Gold Fund, and Elemis Gold. Elemis Gold is a pretty big company, pretty big gold miner, holds about 10%, which in this case is about a $4 million investment. Let me see if I state that correctly. Yeah, that's about a 4 million Canadian investment, which is about 3 million bucks US. So, you know, the numbers get relatively small, you know. when your market cap is 46 million bucks. They have a mineral resource out. Let me zoom in a little bit. Michael says gold making new lows, that many miners keep hitting new lows. Yeah, exactly. And I really like to see that. And I spent the first hour of the stream going over why I like to see gold this low, right? And the miners a lot lower. I really like what I see right now in this gold market. But Q Gold, they say that they have a 43101 mineral resource for 2 million ounces of gold, indicated gold, at a 0.7 gram per ton grade. That's a pretty low grade. And potentially high oxidation. Why is that important? That is important because I learned about that in researching Highcroft mining. And apparently sulfates and oxidization is pretty difficult to mine with, so we'll see. But they have a permitting advantage here, the Fast 41 permitting track. That is, I believe, a thing that Donald Trump made to fast track permitting for critical infrastructure programs. It's good to see that they are qualifying for that. And next to that, they have a project in Canada, which has an historic production of 16,000 ounces, though that's extremely small. All right, we'll see. Let's see what they got. 2 million ounces of gold. Where is it? What does it look like? And how are they going to mine it, right? The Quartz Mountain. Say it's got a 14-year mine life at a pretty decent 135,000 ounce per year production with a low ASIC. $290 million capex. It's going to be pretty difficult to raise 290 million with a market cap of 46 million. So there is definitely something that needs to happen there in the form of debt or in the form of finding very big pocketed outside investors, which might be why Alamos Gold is in this stock. Something to keep in the back of your mind. But they did a preliminary economic assessment, and they say that they have an initial rate of return for 55%. That's pretty good. It's a pretty good rate of return. And they have a 93% rate of return at the current gold price for 14 years with their production. All right. Question that just comes up straight out of the gate. What does the deposit look like and how are they going to raise the money? Because both of those things are extremely important. And why are they worth only $50 million right now in the open market? Mind you, McEwen Mining has already spun off its copper division into a separate subsidiary called McEwen Copper. That, I believe, has not happened yet. And if it has happened, then I own McEwen Copper, but I haven't looked at my portfolio in a while. But I don't believe that that spin-off has happened already. I believe that that's still in the making. But I could be wrong in that. I believe they're still working on that spin-off, but they're definitely going to spin that off. And when they do, I have to reassess whether or not I'm going to keep McEwen Mining or if I'm just going to own McEwen Copper. The Quartz Mountain has a 43101, so we are going to look at that in a moment. So the Quartz Mountain has a deposit and they bought the Angels camp afterwards, right? So these two are now their main project. All right. And this is what I mean, right? This is what I talked about with all of these mining companies. And so we have a deposit here that is close to the edge of your map, right? And we can see that there's a lot of drilling that happens here in their deposit, but it's at the end of their property line. So they don't have the freedom of exploration here, right? They don't have the freedom to explore in any way that they want because they are legally limited to their property line. Mind you, according to Gemini, yeah, Gemini might be wrong with that. I think Gemini is wrong with that, but you know, I could be wrong too. I haven't looked at McEwen in a while, but I know that they are planning on doing the spin-off. But it could already have happened. I don't know. I haven't looked at McEwen in a little bit. Visually speaking, I don't really like this because you know you're pretty cramped in a corner of your map, and that kind of means that you are stuck, right? You're stuck with the potential that you have with exploration. Right. Let's look at the mineral resource estimate. Because I can see a couple things, right, in this table that are very worrying. That are very attention grabbing. And I want to give you guys a moment so that you too can look at this table and tell me what you see in this table that is worrying. And while you do that, I am going to drink a glass of water. So what I think is worrying in this table is the fact that we are talking about a 0.1 gram per ton cutoff grade for gold. It's not so much that 0.1 gram per ton is an economic cutoff grade because 0.1 gram of gold is worth at this point, you know, $45, and you know that could be economical. But obtaining 0.1 gram per ton from a ton of dirt is just extremely hard, and it's pretty difficult to get this grade. And so, Marco, you're extremely right. The cutoff grades here are extremely low. And it is a very big question indeed whether this is going to be economical to mine. And if they are going to push upwards these cutoff grades, what kind of deposit are you left with? Is this deposit still going to be, 2 million ounces of gold if the cutoff grade is higher? Well, you know, that might explain why the stock is trading at $50 million market cap, because you know these are fairy tale level cutoff grades. This is not realistic, in my opinion. You know, in my opinion. Of course, everybody can have their own opinion. But I am very interested to see if they have some form of table in their 43-101 stating what the cutoff grade does to the resource, right? So, and they have this table in here, right? But they keep out, right, out of all of these numbers, they keep the cutoff grade out of all of these numbers, right? Because a cutoff grade is very important. That's what you base your entire mine on. And if it's not going to be economical to mine, then it's simply not going to be mined. And then the deposit is worthless, and then the company has no value. So, you know, it's actually the most important thing in this entire table. Pretty cool pictures, etc., etc. So that is the first question. Before we look at anything else, that is the first question we should answer. right? What does the cutoff grade do to the resource? Because if we are going to put in a cutoff grade of 0.3, 0.5 gram per ton, which is pretty normal for an open pit mine, what does that do to the resource? So we are going to be looking up Q gold. Let's see if today's the day where I can use. So for the people who don't know, this is Saterday Plus. This is the Canadian database where you can find all your data of silver and gold mining stocks. I will make a video explaining how to search things on here, but I'm just gonna go ahead and search for this 43101 mineral resource estimate real quick that they put out right there. Yes, here it is. So this is their 43101, the resource estimate. Well, actually the preliminary economic assessment, which contains the mineral resource estimate. So in this report, right, this report is 335 pages long. We want to know what the mineral reserves are on which they will base their mining, which they do unfortunately not have at the moment. Right, okay. Then we want to know wait. Then we want to know what is the effect of the cutoff grade on this resource, which is called a what's it called again? A sensibility table, or the sensibility of the project. Do they have something about that? The summary, the introduction, property. Mineral resource estimate, database, economic assumptions, bulk, grade, estimation and classification, cutoff sensitivity, right there, 14.14, right? We are going to go to the cutoff sensitivity, right? So now we are looking at this deposit, right? They say they have 2 million ounces of gold in the ground, but they say that they have a cutoff grade of 0.1 to 0.2. Well, those cutoff grades are very low. So if we assume a more standard cutoff grade of, let's say, 0.4 or 0.3, something like that, how many ounces of gold do they actually have, right? So we are going to go and get a little calculator here. And we are going to look at, let's start with 0.4 cutoff grade, right? So we are going to add all of the gold ounces that they have, right? That they have in this indicated and inferred oxide and sulfate levels, right? Sulfates are very important. Look at my video on Highcraft, what sulfates do to mining, right? Because you cannot mine, you cannot extract all the gold from sulfates because you cannot use heap leach, right? And if you can't use heap leach, that means that the processing of your ore is going to get more expensive. It's all very nuanced, very complicated. I'm not an expert in that, but that's just something that I know from my previous research. And it seems like a lot of their ounces are in this sulfate. So then the question is, are they going to be able to use a cheap processing on that? But let's just grab all of these ounces from the 0.4 category. So we have 585 right there. Then we have 64. Then we have 1.2, 1,200, And then we have 350 trade. And at that point, right, we get 2.2 million ounces of gold. And what do they say that they have? So we will remember 2.245, right? Let's see. 7 plus 79 plus 1353 plus 6. So actually, the amount of gold in this deposit doesn't really drop all that much when we increase the cutoff grade. And that's pretty good to see, right? So that means that there's flexibility in their cutoff grade. That's pretty good to see. I didn't expect that, so that's good. Next question I have, for these sulfates, which contains the biggest part of their resource, 1.3 million ounces of gold and 400,000. So 1.7 million ounces of gold are in this sulfate, right? How are they going to process that sulfate? You know, are they going to be able to use? Oh, sorry. You guys just saw that I play Hearthstone in my free time. Or well, I used to play. Heap leach. Right, what are they talking about here? Mineral processing and metallurgy tests. This is a very ugly report, like visually very ugly. It's fine. Heap leach gold extraction. Let's go there. So they say 17 metallurgy studies have been conducted on the material from the quartz mining. Most of the studies were scoping studies, consisted of cyanide leach bottles roll tests. All right, so heap leaching, you put cyanide, which is a form of acid, on your rocks, basically, and the acid dissolves the gold that is in there, and eventually the acid with the gold gets treated so that the gold is separated from the acid, reusing the acid, keeping the gold. That is what heap leaching is. It's a very cheap way to extract gold from materials. But the problem with sulfates is that if the sulfate level is too high in your deposit, you cannot use heap leach, and you use the Merrill-Crowe method instead, and that is just a little bit more costly. So you use a bit higher of a cutoff grade. I think, I think it's been a little while, and I'm a pretty novice. I'm pretty novice at gold refining. It is what it is. But as you can see here, right, they have used the oxide minerals for this test, right? So they didn't use the sulfides. So I'm actually, wait, maybe they talk about that in a little bit. The results for the oxide and the oxide mix components are shown in the 13.43. Okay. So let me just skim over this a little bit. I want to know how they are going to process the resources from the sulfate area, because that's where their biggest resource is. Resource commenced flotation test with 13 rougher and single stage cleaner testers were performed. Composites, all right. So do they use, let me see. So they say here that they've tested their gold recovery with some flotation and with some heap leaching, which means, right, flotation, you crush all the rocks and the gold just floats up, right? Heap leach, you put it all in a pile, you sprinkle acid over it, and you refine it that way. Question still remains, what is going to happen with the sulfates in their materials? And the reason that I'm looking into this company a little bit more is because they have a big deposit, 2.2 million ounces of gold, and the market cap is pretty cheap. So if there are clear answers to these questions, then it might be worth looking into it a little bit more. But if I cannot find direct answers in this, then I'm just gonna pump this thing into a chatbot, into AI, and I'm gonna ask it what the company says about their what do you call it, recovery of the materials, of the sulfide materials. All right, so the following are conducted from the historical metallurgy test works, right? Testing shows oxide material improve with size reduction is required to optimize gold and silver extraction. All right, so they need to crush the ore pretty small, right, to optimize their gold extraction, which means that they have to have a crushing cycle, which is, of course, capex. That's why their capex is probably 290 million, because they need to have a crushing facility in there. The oxide material, weighted gold and silver cyanide extraction are estimated to be 78% for gold and 50% for silver. So there are some things here with the silver extraction from this process. All right, sure. Which is unfortunate, right? Because if you have a big gold and silver resource, then you only get 50% of your gold or your silver and 78% of your gold. So the 2.2 million ounces of resource are actually 78% of that is going to be payable gold at some point, right? Because that's a recovery rate. You can probably get this up by spending a lot of money, but you know, is it worth it, right? Is the grade high enough to, you know, is it worth it, right? And the grade in this deposit, let me just get back to that real quick. What was the grade here? The grade for their gold is about, you know, 0.8, 0 point something, you know, 0.678 grams per ton. So is that worth spending a whole bunch of money to get this recovery up? Who knows? Historical testing showed sulfate material tend to be less amenable to cyanidation than oxide materials. So this is what I talked about, right? The sulfate materials, and that's what they say as well, the sulfates, so the biggest part of their resource is in these sulfates, right? 1.7 million ounces of gold is in these sulfate materials, and the sulfate materials are less amenable to heap leaching. Heap leaching is a cheap processing that you can use. And for the oxide materials, it's 78.6% recovery. And the sulfates are going to be less than this, right? So the deposit is getting smaller and smaller with every step that we take in this research, which doesn't have to be a problem. But given the fact that the grade is already kind of low, poses some questions, right? How are they going to process this, right? Additional column tests are recommended, all right, so they need to spend some money. Heap leach, cyanide, lime, and cement compositions are estimated to be, sure. Additional flotation. Right, so additional flotation tests should be should include analysis for gold, silver, iron, copper, and sulfur. Okay. Gold and silver flotation recovery is based on historical data is estimated to be 80% for gold, 50% for silver. These values were used for flotation recovery in the cash flow. Okay. Historical testing shows that the oxide material is less amenable to flotation than the sulfide material. All right, so I think we have our answer there. And I think what they say, right, in this statement right here, is that they have these two different types of rocks. They got oxide rock and they got sulfide rock. The oxide rock is amenable to cyanide, which means that they can use heap leach, which is a cheap processing. And the sulfides need to be crushed down to this kind of size, right? And, you know, this is where my knowledge ends. I don't know if this size is extremely small, but it seems to be pretty small, right? 30 millimeters, 30 millimeter big kind of rocks for the gold and silver to be extracted by flotation. And I think that that is what they are trying to use for the sulfide materials. And the recovery of that is about 80%, which is, you know, 80% for the gold. That's, you know, pretty decent on this size of deposit. All right. All right. So we know how they are going to try to process this rock. Fine. They have an answer. Sure. You know. But with the heap leach is pretty simple. Heap leaching is pretty cheap, right? Crushing rocks requires a lot of processing. It requires mills, it requires crushing facilities, trucks that go back and forth. It requires a lot of capex, right? And that is probably why they have a capex number in here, as you can see right here. Let me just make this bigger. Of 290 million initial capex, right? And the life of mine sustainability capex is 360 million. That, you know, so they need a whole bunch of money at the beginning of this project. They need 290 million. Now, 290 million is a lot of money, right? But we are talking about a pretty sizable deposit here, 2.2 million ounces of gold. But the grade is just kind of low, right? And if you are going to play with this cutoff grade, if you are going to up this cutoff grade to a more reasonable cutoff grade, then, you know, you run into some problems from cutoff grade to gram per ton. So the grade in this deposit is a risk. If they can get the grade up, that would be great. You know, no puns intended there. But if they can get the grade up, then the economics of this project suddenly make a lot more sense. So let's see, now we know a little bit more about the project. Let's look at the management team, see who is behind this company, and see if there are some people in here who have some experience with increasing the deposit grades, if that's even possible. If that is even possible in this deposit. A lot of tongue twisters right there, right? So Peter Peter Tagliamonte. I'm horrible with names, I'm sorry. He's the chairman and the CEO. He's a registered professional mining engineer, 43 or 35 years of mining experience. He has a strong record of developing and permitting open pit and underground mining projects. This is going to be open pit, I hope, because if this is underground, then the grades don't make any sense at all, and then I'm going to stop looking immediately. So I assume this is going to be open pit. He won the Mine Manager of the Year from the Mining Journal in 2005. Hell yeah. That's you know, resting on your laurels a little bit. Got a reward in 20 in 2005, and we're still gonna mention that, but you know, that's pretty cool, I guess. And he holds a engineering degree. All right, no names mentioned in the track record, unfortunately. Jamshid Mehta, he's the president and the director, 35 years of experience in the capital markets, a 31-year tenure at BMO Capital, and he was the head of Canadian equities, derivatives, ETFs. All right. He advised mining companies across all stages of growth. All right, so we have a money guy in the second seat here. Then we have Dr. Andreas Rompel. Let me just send a little text. All right, Dr. Andreas Rompel. He is also 35 years of experience, so we got a couple of people who have more experiences than I am old, which, you know, could be pretty good, but as of right now, not real mining, not a lot of mining names being named. So this guy, however, held senior roles at Anglo America, big mining company, pretty good, including technical director and capital project evaluator. All right, so a very corporate role. Former country head of Hochschild Mining in Mexico. All right, leads Q Gold's exploration programs. All right. So the questions that I had about the grade are not yet really being answered in the management team, unfortunately. But we have Scott Parents, the director, and he is, let's see, he is currently the vice president of exploration, Alamos Gold, right? So we see the Alamos Gold connection here, right? Alamos Gold owns 9% of this company, and they put one of their VPs into a director seat here, so they are enforcing some form of control, right? So we see a pretty good connection there. If you are into Alamos Gold, and if you like the management team there, know that there is some form of a connection with this company as well. Might be a very big plus, because then a seasoned mining company is actually looking over the shoulders here and giving some real advice and insights. And Alamos Gold has a market cap of 20 billion, so it's a really big player. Seeing him on the board here, you know, that's pretty good. I like that. I like seeing that. Hey, Nana. How you doing? How you doing? Good to see you. And then we have a CFO, we have a director. Let me see if I can see some interesting names here. Right. Okay. So the stories about the grade still exist. They have not yet, unfortunately, been answered very well by the management team. However, we can see that Alamos Gold has some direct interest in this company by a 9% stake and a seat on their board of directors. So there is some influence from a big mining company. All right. Next question. Hey, it's morning there. Hell yeah. Let's see. What are their financial statements like? Investor information. All right. Where is your financial statement? Where are the financials? How can I see how much dilution you are going to give me? Let's just go back to Saterday Plus. Maybe the financial statements are just on here. Interim financial statements. Generate an URL. I'm gonna make a video pretty soon explaining to you guys how to use Saterday Plus if you ever want to get into the tangle weeds of this horrible website. But Q Gold, consolidated financial statements. So we looked at the company, right? It's a very small market cap company with a pretty big deposit, although it is pretty low grade and it has a lot of sulfides in it, which means that the processing is going to be a little bit more expensive, which poses a lot of questions. And one of those questions is, how are they going to raise $290 million in initial capex on a $40 million market cap? Well, to answer that question, we're going to look at the balance sheet. How much cash do they have? Do they have debts? And how much are they diluting their shareholders? So as of March 31st, they had a cash position of about 3.8 million bucks Canadian. And they have some liabilities as well. They have accounts payable and accrued liabilities of 5.9 million. Note 8 and note 12. Let me just write that down because we are definitely going to look at that. 8 and 12. They also have some payable loans, which we are going to see in sector number 9. Not a good sign. Junior exploration company with this kind of market cap, with loans, with debt, is not a good sign at all. Why not? Because this company doesn't have any cash flow, it doesn't have any earnings, it doesn't have any nothing, right? It gets money from investors like you and me. And if it has debt, then it has to get more money from you and me just to pay the interest on that debt. So I don't want that. I don't like that. Because if they cannot raise any money, that means that they are going to be bankrupt because of those loans. I don't like that. And the non-current liabilities, notes payable, note 7, 4.8 million. All right, so there is some stuff going on here. We are going to see that in number 7. We are going to look at all of that. So expenses. First expense that we see, consultation fees, 600K, exploration and evaluation expenditure, 570,000. So they spend more on consultation fees than they do on exploration costs. Make of that what you will. Investor relations and filing fees, 600,000 bucks. So this company spends about as much money on their investor relationships as they do on actual exploration, right? So if we're talking about a company with some questions around the grades, right, of their gold and their silver, I would much rather have them spend this $1 million combined in this additional exploration to see if they can get the overall grade of this deposit up. Because if the grade gets up, the deposit might actually be pretty well sized for a potential mine. But, you know, seeing that they spend in 3 months, you know, about 200 grand a month on investor relationships is a lot of money, right? But, you know, at least our website looks pretty good. So I guess that money is well spent in that way. They also spend about $136,000 in 3 months on traveling. I wish that I could do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. But they have about $1.9 million in expenses, of which about $600,000 is actual exploration. So they spend about twice as much on their general and administrative expenses as on their exploration. So that's a very bad sign. So let's see how much they have diluted their shareholders over the year. So we can see that here. As of the balance of March 31st, 2025, they had 61 million shares outstanding. And as of the balance, March 31st, 2026, they had 164 million shares outstanding. So year over year, they diluted their shareholders for more than 120%. Well, you know, more than almost triple, you know? That's an extremely big amount of, what's it called? Dilution in your stock, right? And unfortunately, that dilution is just going to go into consultation fees and investor relationships and into travel expenses. Unfortunately, really, really unfortunate to see. You can see that they really ramped up everything, right, since 2025. And if we look at this, stock price as well, you can really see that as more as this ramps up, the more all of these numbers ramp up. You know, for me, that's a bad sign. For me, it's a very bad sign. Let me see. Loss on the period 2.2 million. All right. Nothing really all that super interesting here. They do still have some cash, right? All right. So let's go into those notes that we saw. Note number 7. Let's begin there. Lee, if you have some time, shall we take a look at Pirate Gold? Well, I've seen a couple things coming by from Pirate Gold. I've seen some YouTubers talk about it. So yeah, sure. We're gonna dive into that straight after this one. It's gonna be the last one I do, and then we're gonna go eat some dinner. So these are the exploration and evaluation expenditures. This is very important to look at, right? Because we just saw that a lot of their expenses go to consultation fees. And now we are going to look at what they are actually spending their exploration money on. And if we see, where is the actual field expenses, right? Are the expenses? Well, I shouldn't be saying too much about this because I don't know exactly what it means. But you know, a lot of this money that they spend on exploration actually goes into consultation and labor, 450,000. So on top of the consultation fees that they've already paid on a company level, they also pay it on a property level for the consultation about the exploration, right? So you can see that this company really doesn't drill a lot of drill holes at the moment, right? And the money is just going into consultation. That is a very, very big red flag. I don't like to see that at all. Let me see. Right, purchases. Seabridge Gold Options Agreement. Right. If you are interested in this, you can start reading all of these options agreements that they have with Seabridge Gold, and they got some joint venture agreements. All right, sure. Let's see. The loans payable. On October 27, 2021, the company entered into a loan agreement with Aberdeen International Incorporated. Aberdeen International. Let me see if that was the same company that holds a stake in this. No. Okay. For an unsecured loan of 250,000, the interest is accrued 12% per year. Principal plus interest are due and payable on December 31st, 2026. Aberdeen and the company may negotiate repayment of the loan via transfer of security or other investment products, but any agreement of repayment other than cash is subject to subsequent written agreements. On March 31st, 2026, the loan principal of 250,000 plus accrued interest of 163,000 remained outstanding. The CFO of the company is also the CFO of Aberdeen. I don't know exactly what this means, but if this means what I think it means, is that the CFO of this company is also the CFO of the company that loaned them the money. So the CFO has two hands, right? And it's lending money from one pot into another, letting it accrue interest all the way until the end of the loan before they pay it back. If that is really what this means, this is a very big red flag for me because I don't like financial games like that. All right, so sure. Do with that what you will. Let's go to point number 12. Related party transactions. The company shares office space with another company who may have common officers and directors. Right? The costs associated with the use of the space includes the provision of office equipment and supplies are administered by a company to whom the company pays a fee of $10,000 per month. Total amount of $30,000 was charged during the 3 months. All right. As of March 31st, 2026, this company has a payable balance of $771,000 owing to the company to cover shared expenses. The amounts owing are unsecured, non-interest bearing, and due on demand. All right, so they have a $771,000 bill that needs to be paid on demand. AJ Walls. So, in other words, they're circulating accounting like the Mag 7 tech companies. No, this is different because this is one company also having to pay interest on the loan, right? So, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's exactly what it means, but the CFO lends money to a company and then they wait with paying off that loan until it has accrued the most amount of interest before they pay it back. And that doesn't sound all that nice. Key management. All right. As of March. Okay. So, in general, right? I think I have a good enough view of Q Gold. It's a company with a big deposit, right? 2.2 million ounces of gold. The grade of that gold is a little bit low. It's about 0.6 to 0.8 grams per ton. And that deposit is split up into two main parts. One oxidized part and one sulfide part. The oxidized part, they are going to use heap leaching to get the gold out of the rock, which is a pretty cheap way to get gold out of your rocks. For the other part, they are going to use flotation to get the gold out, which means that you are going to have to crush your ore. Crushing ore takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of processing to get done. So for that, they need to spend about $290 million in capex to get this project started. That 290 million is an amount that they need to raise with a market cap of about $46 million Canadian right now. So that is going to be a challenge. So getting to that crucial stage where you have all your permitting in place and you are going to need to raise a lot of capital, they are going to be able to dilute you as a shareholder to get there. That's just how this game works. Their dilution rate is quite high, and as far as I can tell, they have spent a lot of money on consultation, but not on exploration in the past couple months, and that is a pretty big red flag for me. Alamos Gold holds a 9% interest in the company and also has a director's seat, so I do believe there is some oversight from Alamos Gold, but their financials are not up to par with my standards, and therefore I will not be putting it on my watch list. However, if in the future this company manages to get their grades up, then I would be pretty interested to look at it a lot further. Because if this company had a whole bunch more grade in their resource, it would actually be a very interesting story to look at. And the connection with Alamos Gold would definitely be something to further investigate. But, this is, as far as I can see it right now, I don't really like the financials, personally. But yeah, thanks for the tip. Definitely a cheap story right now with a couple side points to it, Definitely. Let's just, to round it out, look at their recent news releases. Yeah, see, as I said, in the beginning of this analysis, right? They have some warrants outstanding, which are in the money right now, which let me see. After closing of them consecutive days, I'm gonna... $29 million warrants were exercised, right? So there were a lot of warrants that were in the money, and they were exercised in May and April, right? As you can see right here, this is about where the warrants were exercised. So you see some selling pressure in the stock because warrants got exercised. That is kind of due for the course. That is kind of what is happening. And some warrants expired. But the company is cashed up right now, 5.8 million bucks, because they have exercised all those warrants, which, you know, gives a lot of selling pressure in stock, which could be an opportunity if you are willing to take the risks associated with this stock. All right. So that is it for Q Gold. Man, the things that we learn, huh, about the gold and silver industry when you start doing this for a long time. I going to take the calculated risk of looking into pirate gold right now. I have about, 35 minutes still on this live stream for me. So we're going to look at pirate gold. But I do want to say beforehand, if this turns out to be a very interesting story, then we are going to look at it another day in a little bit more research. Pirate gold. First thing to notice, their name pops up instantly when you look it up. And pirate gold is a very generally interesting thing to look up. So their SEO is on point. I like that. That's a good point. That's definitely a very big plus. Website looking slick. Got a cool visual in the back. Lots of gold, lots of veins, lots of visual gold. Old people looking at maps. I like it. Good points. Treasure Island, the next gold district in Newfoundland. Oh, we're going back to Newfoundland, people. This is a place where I lost a shit ton of money. Newfoundland, home to Newfound Gold. A company, which I have lost a lot of money in, but I still own, but I realized some losses in this company. Newfound Gold definitely put Newfound on the map. Great property, great grades, extremely interesting company, big position of Eric Sprott, or well, it used to be like that. But now we're gonna go back to Newfoundland, pirate gold. And the visuals from the back, right? These veins that are on top of the surface with this visual gold, right? These quartz veins, very, very reminiscent of Newfound Gold, right? Instantly. It's pretty good. Let me explore those projects. So off the bat, I can make a bet that it's going to be high-grade gold, very concentrated, in low intervals. Let me see if I'm correct on that. And if not, I'm going to take back. I don't know if you guys can see it, but they did something with the cursor where it's like a little skull. What do we think about that? What do we think about that? Is that tacky? Is that cool? Or is that the 8th sin in the Bible? Is that cringe? What is that? What is that? Is that cool or is that cringe? I don't know. I haven't decided yet what I think about that. But let's look at the project. I like it. I like the vibe of this website. It's kind of themed in a certain way. I think it's pretty cool. right? The Treasure Island Gold project is Pirate Gold's flagship asset. It's in the Newfoundland Gold Belt, right? District scale package, 92 kilometer strike length. All right, so Treasure Island project. Moosehead Gold. Huh? This is pretty close to Newfound Gold. Yeah, Queensway Newfound Gold. So it's right next to. All right, okay, I see what they're doing. I see what they're doing. So this is where Newfound Gold is, right? This is a pretty interesting company, right? Eric Sprott is in this, and they have this. What is it? What's it called? The Treasure Island project, which I cannot see where it is right now, but you know, it might be just next to Newfound Gold. Right, so it's probably going to have some of the same characteristics, right? Extremely high grade, 44 gram per ton gold assays here, 70 gram per ton gold assays right there, over pretty shallow intervals. Right, I'm going to leave you guys for 2 seconds. I'm going to go to the restroom real quick, and then we're going to dive back into this. Looking pretty interesting. Be right back, 2 minutes. We're back. We're back. Boom, ready to get back into it. Should have done that before I got into it, but you know what it is. Things happen. So, Pirate Gold, the Moosehead Zone. First impressions that I had looked a lot like Newfound Gold, right? Intervals, same kind of widths. And it's probably really close to the surface too. So in that sense, it's instantly a competition between them and Newfound Gold, right? Which one is the better company? Which one has the most gold? Which one is the cheapest? And which one is the closest to production, right? So let me see what is going on in their table right here. See, these gold grades in this area, in this part of Canada, are going to be extremely high, right? 170 gram per ton gold over 1 meter, from 14 meters, right? So this is very newfound gold-like. Extremely high grades, extremely close to surface, but the intervals are going to be pretty shallow because this is a very veiny type of system that they have in Newfoundland. And the thing with newfound gold that got people really excited, right? This part of this chart from newfound gold, it was the hope that newfound gold could find a bigger, more, a fatter system deep down. So they were drilling very deep holes to find out is the vein system that they were having on the surface, if that extended downwards. Unfortunately, that did not happen, which caused the stock to lose, to lose about 83% of its value and did not recover since then because the stock kind of the narrative around the stock kind of collapsed. Right now it's a vein system that is pretty close to production, that is extremely high grade. That is a different story than having a open and at depth system, right? So same questions for this, right? I hope that this company doesn't do the same thing that Newfound Gold did, and I hope that they're not trying to drill holes that are like a kilometer deep, right? That costs an extreme amount of money. Because Newfound Gold already did that. They didn't find anything. And, what are the chances that they are going to find it? So I hope that they're not doing that because that would just be a waste of money. In my opinion, they could be wrong with that. Pirate recently changed its name from Sokoman to Pirate Gold, and they switched from iron ore to gold exploration. They seem to be excellent at promoting. All right, let's look at the financial statements and let's look how much money they spend on promotion and kind of see what they got in return from that. Because I have seen a lot of stuff about this company, so they're probably, getting into some kind of newsletter thing. There's probably something like that going on. Cool guy holding his rod. Might have to blur this on YouTube, Yeah, see, this is really newfound gold like too. These vein systems with, this visual gold in there. That's really what got people really hyped up about newfound gold back in the day. All right, so I just have a couple questions, right, about this deposit. We just looked at this. Right, so they have these vein systems, right? I want to know. All right. All right, let's look at their share structure. Let's look at their news. And let's look at their financials. Because if I know in what part of the world it is, and it is near Newfound Gold, I can already kind of understand what their exploration is like. And I would love it if they had a resource, but it doesn't seem like they have a resource yet. Let's see. Flagship asset, Newfound Gold is a districtual land package. Majority of expensive trend remains vastly unexplored. Potential for a new discovery. Bonanza grade intercept, yes. Tier 1 location, yes. I don't think that they have a resource yet. All right, I want to know how much they are spending on their exploration. Pirate Gold. Let's see. All right, some news came out. Something happened in September 2025. This is probably when they became public, right? They changed their face, and they are worth about 96 million Canadian right now, which is roughly 70 million Canadian or 70 million US compared to Newfound Gold, which is worth about 750 million, right? So this is a company 1/10 the size of newfound gold, right? So if you like newfound gold but think it's too expensive, this might be a good place to start looking. They do have 500 million shares outstanding with some stock options, right? So depending on what the strike price of these options are, there might be a little bit of selling pressure in the stock. They do have a big cash position as well, and Eric Sprott is in this stock as well, which makes sense because he was also in newfound gold, right? So he's taking another bet here on the same kind of system. Well, that makes sense. Give me the presentation. Hell yeah, dude. They got a podcast. That is let me see if it's cool or if it's cringe. They got some new recruits. Yeah, it's cool. It's not cringe. It's kind of cool. You know, they're doing some marketing. Some young people on the job. Hell yeah, Pirate Gold, if you see this, please fly me out. I will make a super cool video for you. And we'll get this treasure hunter thing on the map. You know what I mean? We're gonna make some cool videos for you. Get me out there, please. All right. So, Dennis Leo Butley, he is the founder of Newfound Gold. That makes sense because Newfound Gold has changed its management team because currently they are working on putting that thing into production instead of exploration. So it makes sense that Dennis has moved companies and is doing the same thing that he did at Newfound Gold, but now at a different company, right? Relevant, successful experience, this guy. Pretty good to have him. Tim Fraud, discover the Valentine Lake. That is Equinox's gold mine, which is about 90 kilometers down the road. Having him on the team, very good. Queensway is the discovery from Newfound Gold, right? And he led that drilling. Management team looks great. Management team is amazing, right? Relevant, successful experiences in this region. I don't think you can get a better management team than this for this particular region, for this particular project. I really like this. I don't need to look at these guys. I know what they've done. Good people. All right. We don't beat the geological odds. We play them. This is a hella AI line. This is very AI coded right here, if I have to say so. All right, sure. You do you. You know what I mean? Let's see. So this presentation deck is definitely made by AI, which is fine. I don't mind that. But this is a very AI way of talking, right? They don't offer one-off hits. They form repeatable systems that run for kilometers. That is like a very ChatGPT kind of line. It's like in the AI world, everything has like a different accent. It's very ChatGPT coded. Let's see, right? Biggest question I have for this company right now. Newfound Gold was trying to find very deep running vein systems. And they spent a lot of money trying to explore for that, and they failed in doing that, and they pivoted their company into becoming a potential producer. If this company is going to find or is going to look for the same vein systems, then that means that it is going to be a lot of exploration money that is being thrown at this. So let's see what they are looking for. Let's see if they are talking about that. And this is kind of where they were looking, right? In this kind of zone. They're already talking about that. Let me see how deep they are exploring, because all of this stuff is kind of, you know, in some way well known if you know the story about Newfound Gold. If you don't, look at it, a video that I made about it about 7 months ago. The position is good. I like Newfoundland, right? It's very mining friendly. It's very, in some way accessible. I'm skipping through this because this property looks a lot like Newfound Gold, right? And let me see. Let me see what they are looking for. Actually, let me see. Right, so this is Sokoman Mineral Resources has changed their name to Pirate Gold, right? That's what AJ Walsh was saying. So they are pivoting to the gold exploration. So this is what I was looking for, right? So they initiated a 50,000 meter drill program, and I want to see what they are going to be drilling for. Drilling has commenced at the Treasury Island with 2 drill rigs at site and a 3rd scheduled to come online. All right. Sure. And then they are just talking about their YouTube series. Bro, talk about the exploration program that you're spending a couple $1,000,000 on. Nobody cares about your YouTube series, man. Come on. We recognized early on our asset assessment in the Treasury Island that discoveries here are going to be made with the drill bit. Bro, of course. What do you mean? Truly regional scale projects on our hand. Number of mineral systems. Our team is rapidly moving to target exploration drilling stages, embarking on ambitious drilling programs, which allows us to explore both the development process and the grassroots stuff. But are you going to be drilling deep or are you going to be drilling wide? That's what I want to know. And they don't seem to be answering that. Let me see if they are answering that. I'm really wondering about that because that's where Newfound Gold really spend a lot of money on. They raise a lot of money to explore really deep in this kind of system. And it might have been a mistake because they didn't find any gold there. Financials are very dated. Let me see. All right. I'm going to recap this story real quick. We are going to look at the financials. Let me see if they have a financial statement. Yep, there it is. So, Pirate Gold financial statements ending the 3 months of March 31st. The biggest thing about this company, right? I understand where they are located. I understand the type of system that they are exploring. I understand that it's going to be a system with extremely high grades. The biggest player in the region is Newfound Gold. Newfound Gold is a 10 times market cap than this company has because they are further along in their exploration. They have a mineral resource and they are moving towards production. And they are moving towards production with an extremely high grade but pretty small deposit. And I remember that when I was invested, well, I still am invested in Newfound Gold, but at that time, I was really disappointed by the size of the deposit because the grades really showed a different story than the size of the deposit. And that's why the stock dropped like 30% in a single day when that report came out. This company is trying to find a similar deposit. A mistake, or well, a misstep, Newfound Gold spent a lot of money trying to explore for a system that wasn't there at depth. And I hope that this company doesn't do the same thing, because if they are going to be spending a lot of money trying to find something that they might not have, right? And that is just going to cost the investors a lot of money, just like Newfound Gold. Let's see. They are cashed up, right? Eric Sprott is in this company for 22%. So that means that the company is going to be cashed up, and they are always going to find cash with Eric Sprott, which is a very good backing, right? Eric Sprott was involved in Newfound Gold, and it really pushed that onwards, right? He put new management in there to move this towards production, and the management team from Newfound Gold is now at Pirate Gold. So in that sense, it's a story that keeps evolving. Who knows, maybe Eric Sprott will consolidate this entire region at some point and just take ownership of everything. Biggest producer in Newfound Gold is Equinox Gold at the Valentine mine, which is located about 90 kilometers downwards from Pirate Gold. But yes, the biggest producer there for sure. But in the exploration space, Pirate Gold is definitely competing with Newfound Gold. So they got about 20 million bucks in cash, which is not a surprise, seeing that Eric Sprott owns 22% of this company. Let's see. They have accounts payable and accrued liabilities of 1.5 million. Flow-through premium liabilities, so they have sold some options on their stock for 3 million. All right, doesn't seem like they have some crazy amount of liabilities going on compared to the amount of cash that they have, so that's good. What do they spend their money on? So in the 3 months ending on March 31st, 2026, they've spent 5 million bucks on mineral exploration expenses. No, it's 5 and 9. So we're definitely going to look into that, because this might tell me that they are looking at exploring at depth, right? And you see that, it's a big number. 5 million bucks in exploration expenses is a lot of money. But office in general, administrative expenses, right? It's pretty low. Filing fees, pretty low. Management and consultation, low compared to the exploration that they do. Corporate development and travel, decently sized, but the vast amount of money is going into mineral exploration expenses, which is good to see, which is also pretty understandable, knowing that Eric Sprott owns 22% of this company, and he is very on top of his game with his mining investments, of course. All the other fees are pretty low, some share-based compensation, some salaries and benefits, vast amount of money being spent on exploration. Let's see. This is for the 9 months ending in 2026, so that's a little bit of a different view. However, they are spending about 5.5 million bucks in 9 months on share-based compensation. So there is a lot of share-based compensation, but you just have to take that for what it is. I kind of want to see how much they have diluted their shareholders over the year. So the balance of shares on March 31st, 2025 was 331 million, and the balance on 2026, March 31st, was 500 million. So you see that they have diluted their shareholders for about 50% from 2025 to 2026. That's a pretty big dilution rate. However, as we just saw, most of that money is going into exploration. However, that exploration has to lead to something for it to be valuable. And Newfound Gold did this as well, spending a lot of money on exploration, and they didn't find anything at depth, unfortunately. And that really tanked the stock and the valuation that people had. So let's look at their exploration expenses. So, exploration and evaluation assets and expenditures. You can see that the expenditures really ramp up in March 2026, right? From 400,000 to 1.8 million, right? So the expenditures are primarily in the Treasure Island. So what we just looked at, right? Next to Newfound Gold, basically. They are spending a bunch of money in that deposit, or well, not deposit, on that property to try to see what is going on there. And they have spent that money on geological surveys and on drilling and on salaries and consultations. All right. That is pretty good. The vast amount of money is going into actual exploration, right? Geological surveys and drilling. So that's good to see, right? So they're raising a bunch of money, but that money is being spent in the ground, right? They put that money in the ground. I like to see that. That is a pretty good thing. But I just want to know how deep they are drilling these holes. If they are exploring at depth, that is what I would like to know. Because that's actually a concern that I have. Oh, this is the acquisition, that's all fine. Investment in Finland Lithium. Seems they are carrying a little bit of an investment in another company, which they have lost a whole bunch of money on. Oh no, they've sold it, right? All right, sure. Fine. Number 9. Let's go there. Related party transactions. Right, we can see here the salaries of their CEO and of their board members. Pretty modest salaries, but they compensate themselves in stock options and in stock in share-based compensations, as you can see here, Salaries are pretty low, but the share-based compensations are pretty high. If you want to do some more research, you can always look at what these company members actually hold at the moment, right? If they are selling their stock or if they are keeping it, that tells you a lot about their own conviction, right? But as far as I can see, I'm not going to get a lot of information about how deep they are drilling these holes. And that is something that I would like to know. All right. All right. Pretty interesting. It's another story in Newfoundland, It's another story in Newfoundland. It's really going to be between Pirate Gold and Newfound Gold. Same jurisdiction, are located next to each other, right? Pirate Gold is holding up a lot better than Newfound Gold if you see these side by side, just as a stock price is concerned. Newfound Gold is in a different stage, in a different company stage, right? They got a deposit, they're moving towards production. Pirate Gold is still exploring. A big money pit that Newfound Gold has walked into is thinking that there was gold at depth as well. They spend a lot of money and a lot of dilution trying to get that figured out. However, unfortunately, they did not find that. Hopefully, Pirate Gold is not doing the same thing. Unfortunately, they are not telling us all that much about their marketing expenses. But it's definitely a story just like Newfound Gold. You know, if you like Newfound Gold and if you think that Pirate Gold might be a better bet, you know, if you think that they may have more gold in the ground, Pirate Gold right now is about 1/10 the price of Newfound Gold. So there might be an opportunity for you there to gamble, to play with the odds again. I am in Newfound Gold. I like the company. I like the trajectory that they have. Very high grade, near, you know, working towards production. Pirate Gold is for me. I'm gonna wait until they have a resource, right? Because I should have done that with Newfound Gold, and I definitely learned my lesson with that one. So I'm definitely gonna wait until they have a resource, see how big it actually is before I think about an investment. And who knows? Eric Sprott is in there for 22%, so maybe at the time that they have an actual resource, maybe it's consolidated with another company. You know, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Definitely still a very big question that is out there is, are they exploring at depth? But I think that that is it for Pirate Gold. Thank you for the suggestion. I kind of forgot that this stock was talked about so much. I like the fact, and I do want to point this out, I like this kind of, you know, this. I like this, that they're doing this. This vlogging, this making videos, you know, getting people involved a little bit. Yeah, I think that that is, I'm gonna round it up for the live stream today. We've been live for like 3.5 hours. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Always fun to talk with you guys and to yap about some gold and silver stocks. Gonna be live again. Let me just check my schedule for next week. Let me just see real quick. Yeah, I'm gonna be live again next week, same time, you know, 3:30 CEST. So same time as this, probably also until about this time. So for like 3.5 hours, something like that. I expect next week to have a couple videos coming out back to back because I'm gonna edit last week's live stream and this one. But yeah, gonna see you guys again next week. You know, if you wanna support my work, you can do that by buying me a coffee on the buy me a coffee/SilverLiningAnalysis. Still wondering whether or not I should be posting my portfolio on there for like subscribers or like paid members or something like that. Gonna make a decision in that pretty soon. Think it would be interesting to share, but you know, if there's a little bit of feedback from you guys, then I'll definitely keep thinking about that. AJ Walls, you're welcome, man. Super chat is okay, man. Everything is okay, man. This really, I'm here just for to share my thoughts with you guys. But yeah, definitely appreciate you guys coming here, man. Definitely appreciate seeing that you guys are here week after week. It's a lot of fun, man. Marco, just a note on proper pronunciation for Newfoundland. It's Newfoundland. All right, Newfoundland. All right, I'll be keeping that in mind for next time. Common mistake, do not say Newfoundland or Newfoundland. Local residents use a short fin sound in the middle and land heavily on land. So it's Newfoundland. Newfoundland. All right. Man, I'm becoming a local Canadian, you know, a local Newfoundlander. Yup. Who knew, huh? Who knew? But yeah, if any of these companies are watching, by the way, just want to put this out there. AJ Wells, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If any of these companies are watching, I just want to put it out there that I'm very interested in coming by and filming a little bit of your property to make like a cool video about. Hit me up on the email, you know? AJ Walls, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you guys every week in this chat, man. And who knows, maybe we'll find some hidden gems, you know, in this research. All right, guys, I'm gonna think about cutting it off right now, and then I'll see you guys next week. You know, next week, same time, same place. You know, 3:30 CEST. For me, this works perfect. Westward Gold next. All right, gonna put that one on the list for next week. Gonna put that one on the list. I'll put the gold thing in here, and let me just write that down real quick. Westward Gold. All right. All right, guys. I wish you guys a very good week. We definitely had a very sizable correction this week. You know, a lot of emotions, a lot of hurt people, a lot of volatility last week. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. You know, take care, have fun, and I'll see you guys next week. All right? Bye bye. All right. See you guys.